Still coming in.
Larry.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call the meeting to order. If you wouldn't mind having a seat, that would be wonderful. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for our statement of values. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As we gather, we humbly seek blessings upon this meeting. May we act with strength, courage, and will to perform our obligations and duties to our people with justice to all. Let us seek wisdom so that we may act in the best interests of our people, our neighbors, and our country. All this we ask so we may serve our community with fairness and respect, putting their needs before all.
Thank you. Please be seated. City Clerk, roll call. Oh, wait a minute. First we have, do you have the statement you need to read?
I do.
Okay.
We'll do the roll call, then we'll do two statements today.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Councilmember Caserta? Here. Davis? Here. Kolstad?
Here.
Mahan? O'Neill?
Here.
Watanabe? And Mayor Gilmore.
Here.
Motion to excuse Councilmember Mahan.
Motion to excuse Councilmember Mahan in a second. All right. Lights on that motion, and that passes unanimously.
Thank you. Mayor Gilmore, may I also do the AB 23 announcement that members of the Santa Clara Stadium Authority, Sports and Open Space Authority, and Housing Authority are entitled to receive $30 for each attended meeting. Additionally, that the City of Santa Clara's Statement of Behavioral Standards indicates that the City of Santa Clara has adopted a code of ethics and values and behavioral standards for public meetings to promote and maintain the highest levels of conduct. This includes mutual respect, robust discussion, and allowing city business to be done in an efficient and consistent manner. Please note that, as the presiding officer, the mayor's direction in matters of process and decorum should be followed. Welcome, and thank you for your participation.
Thank you, Rod, for that. Next, we have approval of minutes from June 6th.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Any questions? Lights on the motion, and that passes unanimously. And then we have approval of the minutes from June 7th, the special meeting.
So moved.
It's a motion second. Lights on the motion there, and that passes with one abstention. Is that true, Councilmember Kolstad? You're abstain. Okay. All right. Thank you. Before we go to continuances and exceptions, City Manager, you have an announcement for us.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, and members of the council and members of the public. Recently, we filled two key positions in the city management, and I would like to take just a couple minutes to introduce you to the individuals who've just been promoted or placed in very key positions, like I said. First, I would like to introduce the new Director of Public Works, and that's a known entity to most of you. That's Alan Curatori.
All right,
Alan. You stand up, Alan. Congratulations, Alan.
Right. And
you have some big shoes to fill here.
I was about to say that.
Who was the last Public Works Director? Wait a minute. Okay.
Since I did that job for years and years, these are big shoes to fill. But Alan, just in the way of background, he's been with our city since 2000. Prior to that, he worked for City of Mountain View as well as private consulting firm. And then in between, he had a small stint with the Santa Clara Valley Water District, and I don't hold that against him. Then for the last couple years, he's been the assistant city manager in the city manager's office. We went through a big selection process. There were very good candidates, and I was given the 3 finalists, and we interviewed, and then finally, definitely, Alan was the best fit for our city, and I'm very pleased to announce that he's been. It's not a whether it's a promotion, but it's a very key position. He's been assistant city manager, and I'm very sure he's going to do an excellent job in running that department. So congratulations to Alan. Secondly, it's again a pleasure to bring a very talented person to our management team, Jonathan Veach. If you could stand up. Jonathan Veach is the new Housing and Community Services Division Manager. As you know, that's another key area. And again, Jonathan is the perfect fit as far as the resume and his experience is concerned with our needs. He comes to us from New York, and he's worked in investment banking as well as for affordable housing type of projects. So that's the perfect fit for that division. And Jonathan started about a week ago with us, so we just wanted to welcome him to our management team.
Thank you, and welcome. Congratulations, Alan, and welcome, Jonathan. You came on the perfect night. Housing's an issue tonight, so congratulations, and we look forward to working with both of you. All right, the next item is an item I put on the agenda, which is a recommendation to continue Agenda Item 18A, Report on Minimum Wage, Community Outreach to the City Council meeting of July 18th, and also as a second item, I'd like to move up the affordable housing fee item to after the consent calendar, and Vice Mayor Caserta would like to speak on that.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The latter one, I'd like to bifurcate these. I'd like to make a motion and accept your recommendation of moving 21B up to after 15A, so that would be a motion.
Second. Motion, second. Lights on the motion, and that passes unanimously.
And I know we have some exciting special orders of business, and I wish my comments on this one were a little more abbreviated, but I hope my colleagues can give me a moment for latitude on process and consistency and best practices instead of personality issues. I have some concerns and questions, and I want to be collegial, and I want to support the recommendation. I just find the recommendation not consistent what we've been doing in the past, and I want help for clarification. So as we know, we've done some good practices of publishing the agenda a day before for people to get here. And I asked the city clerk after what happened Friday to look up what the motion was when we brought up the minimum wage about 3.5 months ago. And the clerk's office did a great job of letting us know unanimously, we all agreed that after 3 months robust stakeholder meetings that it would be brought back on the first meeting of July, which was unanimously agreed, which was tonight's meeting. And I talked to the city manager periodically because under the charter, it's a city manager that manages the agenda, no one else on the council. So the city manager called me late morning on Friday and said that he received an email from one of our council assistants directing through the mayor that this item be pulled. And according to his recollection of the email, that it was pulled for no specific reason given in the email, nor a specific date to be returned. So as you can say, being Italian and Portuguese, I was perplexed, and can you say upset? I called Lynn Garcia and asked her to have the mayor please call me, because the mayor, like all of us, was busy, and she was going to be done around 12:30. It's 4 days later, and I've not received a call back. And what concerns me is, as chair of this committee that shepherded this through the last 4 months, I was not consulted on this, and it's not just about me, it's about any of us that have been chairs. Can you imagine a recommendation unanimously approved, and we've known about this for 3.5 months, it's been on the pending list. You reach out to try and get a hold of the directive, which was by the mayor, and not gotten a call back. I do appreciate the one-sentence email that she sent me that said simply, basically, that she wanted to pull the item, and this time she gave a specific date. I followed up with some questions. I've still not received answers to those questions. I also digged in a little deeper, and I asked the city clerk, has this been done before, and in the Constitution, our charter, is this allowed? And feel free if I'm incorrect in any of this. He said 2 ways that this could happen after an item has been published in this situation Thursday. One is the consultation of the mayor and the city manager agreeing to do that. My understanding that did not occur. Or second, 4 of us on the council signed an agenda report to do that. That did not happen. A few hours later, I got a call from the clerk saying that an agenda report has now been produced by the mayor, which was different than her directive in the email. I've said many times before that our meetings go way too long. Our last 6 meetings have been an average of 4.5 to 8 hours, with averaging 22 to 28 agenda items. So my question is, if this is outside the charter, if this is outside common practice, and many people have known about this for 3.5 months, and the reason we pull things up a day before is to let people know, because our most precious resource is their time to be here. And to boot, we have an affordable housing issue that we're discussing that business and working families have worked hard on. So I thought we'd kill 2 birds with 1 stone. So my question is, if we wanted the meeting to be shorter, and we've had meetings till 2 or 3 in the morning, and this is the first time that I've seen a directive in an email because of timing issues to actually have an item pulled. My question is, there's 20-plus different items we could have pulled tonight. Why would we pull an item that has unanimous consent? Why was there not consultation with the city manager on this? And why did I not get my simple questions answered as the chair of the committee? Because all of us as chairs, I feel there's common practice and that wasn't followed. And again, my comments are process-based. They're not personality-based, and I want to support this motion, and I asked for these questions to be answered Friday. I did not receive anything from my mayor. So, Mayor, maybe you could help me in supporting this recommendation, and if I feel I can understand this better, I would be, supportive, but otherwise I'll be making a recommendation to have the item heard tonight. Maybe you can help me.
Okay. So what Mr. Caserta said is just simply wrong. There was a communication on the meeting. This particular item is a 2 to 3 hour item. We have many 2 to 3 hour items on the agenda this evening. It's simply a matter of managing the agenda. We all know that there's a lot of people in the community that care about minimum wage, including many people on this council. But we also have a lot of people that care about affordable housing. And I preferred to continue the minimum wage item until next week. We're talking 7 days because it doesn't change the implementation of the minimum wage item. It still would be implemented January 2018. So a week's delay doesn't change it. But the way the agenda was put together, there was many long items. So our first item would have been the minimum wage item, which would take 2 to 3 hours. Then we have several long items on the agenda by the time we would have gotten to the affordable housing trust fee. It was the last item on the agenda. It would have been the wee hours of the morning. So I know that, and I respect everyone's opinion on things. I'm just trying to manage the meeting. 1 week delay doesn't change the implementation of the minimum wage item. So I just wanted to manage the agenda responsibly by moving it to next week. We can thoroughly now, by moving up the affordable housing item, we can thoroughly discuss it and not have it at the wee hours of the morning so the public wouldn't have to stay up late to participate in that. So we owe it to them and we owe it to the importance of the issue. So I had talked to many involved, including sending Mr. Caserta an email on Friday that I was managing the time of the agenda. So is there a motion to continue this for a week?
I'm not done with my question, please. Thank you for your latitude. City manager, isn't it the practice of the city manager to manage the agenda?
I believe, Mr. Caserta, anyone can ask for a continuance. I do it frequently, you do it, staff does it. Anyone can ask for a continuance on the agenda if there's a motion and a second and the votes to do it. Excuse me.
I am not. I have the floor. I had a simple question to the city manager.
Okay.
And my whole point is, I absolutely agree we have the right to pull an agenda item. The best practice is normally applicants ask for it or people from the public do, and they do this before the agenda is published. This was after the agenda. This was after the agenda.
The agenda was revised and put out. City manager, would you answer his question?
My question is, whose purview is it to manage the... I mean, these are process questions that we need to have answered.
Vice Mayor Caserta, it does start with the city manager's office, and I approve the setting of the agenda, and we go through a process. We look at, durations of agenda items, and we look at the following meetings too, so we try to balance things. But beyond that, as has been discussed here, the mayor or any council member can then continue the item or request, just like staff would do. But it starts in the city manager's office.
And my last question, Lisa, and I'm not here to pull emails sent back and forth. We could do that. Is I asked you in a follow-up, I agree that this meeting was, packed. why didn't we pull other items that we didn't unanimously agree on that was on the pending list that we've known was going to be brought back for 3 months? That's my question. And in the comments 3.5 months ago, it's pretty clear that the minimum wage is probably going to easily get unanimous support. It's not going to be a 3-hour discussion. So I feel those reasons are specious, and I'm just asking why you chose that item.
Councilmember Caserta, we've discussed the minimum wage issue before. There was a lot of people that were planning to attend. I believe you called a lot of people to attend through the labor unions. And many people have had a chance to share their views with us. So we will hear those views again next week, and whether it takes 2, 3, or 4 hours, we will hear everyone's view. I expect and welcome a lot of speakers on that issue. It just takes a long time. And so because we've heard that issue before, and because the week delay doesn't change the implementation from January 2018, this particular item of the affordable housing, which will take quite a while, hasn't been heard before, and this will be the first time. So we wanted to hear it before midnight, if we could, and have some meaningful discussion on it. Councilmember Davis?
I was going to make a motion, so as I have the floor. It would have been nice if you would have just responded back instead of one sentence and answering this, so I don't have to do this here. I think this process is not best practice. I think it's not reflective of what the charter says. I don't think it's reflective of being congenial. But with that said, I have no problem, supporting your motion and having it next week. So that's my motion.
To continue, is that what you said? Okay, thank you.
And the meeting's getting longer as we speak. Thank you. All right. Thank you. All right. Next, on a happier note, we have a presentation of a certificate of special mayoral recognition to the Santa Clara Vanguard Drum and Bugle Corps on their 50th anniversary. And I think we have Charles Frost here in the audience, if you'd like to come forward. Excuse me, Councilmember Caserta, do you have something to say?
Yeah, I'm disappointed in your comments at the end there. It again is not reflective of the things that we have up there.
Can we continue? Charles.
Thank you. Sorry, Charles, if you'd like to come forward. So, I had the very wonderful pleasure of attending your 50th anniversary gala at the Convention Center and the Hyatt Hotel. And I also had the opportunity to attend the event at Santa Clara High School with the Vanguard. And it's just unbelievable that it's been 50 years since the Vanguard Drum and Bugle Corps was founded in 1967 in Santa Clara. And I know that we had a member of our city council, Jerry Marcelli, who was very much involved in it, and I did see his son Brian there at the gala event, and I know how important it was to Jerry. But the Drum and Bugle Corps is an artistic, competitive youth activity. You're almost a small nation in yourself, the way you travel around and you perform, and at the level of which your young people perform is just incredible. But you're teaching them to become responsible members of society. And the Santa Clara Vanguard has been a 6-time Drum Corps International Champion, which is amazing. And you've thrived due to the dedication, determination, and work of the young people who have marched with volunteers and sponsors who have given so generously of their time and support. And what's amazing is you are the executive director, and I've never met anyone as enthusiastic, energetic, forward-thinking as you are. So congratulations on the 50th year for the Santa Clara Vanguard. At your gala event, you had a history of the Vanguard. Before you attended the event, you went down a hallway, and it had the very familiar outfits from 1967 forward and how they've changed. And for those of you who have been around all these years, with the green and the white boots, and which I was always jealous of, and the hats and everything. I mean, it was just incredible to walk through history and see the Vanguards, how they've changed over the years. So congratulations, and I know you have a few things to say about it, so welcome.
Thank you so much for having us, and thank you to you and the city of Santa Clara for participating in our celebration weekend. It was a great honor.
Oh, is it on? We want to hear you.
There we go. Yeah. So thank you. Thank you to you and the city for participating in our celebration weekend. It's a great honor to be in the city. of Santa Clara for 50 years. I did bring a little gift for the city. I hope you'll display it. This is a photocopy of actually the drum corps is early 1968, so right after its inception in front of City Hall here.
Wow.
And this is one of our Vanguard stars that the performers wear. So I hope you'll display it in your case and be proud of the Drum and Bugle Corps and the organization as we continue another 50 years. It really is a great honor. At the end of every season, the people who graduate, so once you turn 21, you can't participate. So we call them age outs or graduation. And they go through the line and they say what city they're from. And we represent, this year specifically, we represent 3 countries and about 28 states from the United States. And they give their city and state where they're from. And then we tell them that you always have a home at Santa Clara, and they go back through and they say that their hometown is now Santa Clara. And so this city means a lot to us, and I hope that you'll see more of us, and I know you'll see more and hear more of us in the future. So thank you.
Great. Debbie, did you have something, your lights on, or Pat?
Oh, I just wanted to say thank you, Charles, for coming, and, Jeff is, you took over Jeff's place, but yeah, we like your enthusiasm, and you're embedded in the city, and we really appreciate everything that you've done through just musical. It's magical. I mean, what you do is a great thing, and I know the drum line, I just love the drum line. And thank you for doing Relay for Life. That was the most impressive thing that I've ever seen, and I'm sure those people really appreciated what you did for them, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Pat?
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to say that on New Year's Day, when the Rose Parade came on national television, and my Vanguard marched #1 down the street, my friends started calling me from L.A., Sacramento, San Diego. Hey, I didn't know you guys had a famous band. I said, oh, yeah, it's been around forever. Thanks for that.
Absolutely. Our pleasure.
Thank you. So we have a recognition for you, and we'd love to take our photo with you.
Absolutely.
That's okay?
Thank you.
Okay, that was a 50-year celebration. Our next celebration is a 100-year celebration. And we have a very special guest today in Santa Clara, and we're so pleased to have Lorraine Veronica Freitas here in our city. So Lorraine, if you'd like to come forward, please. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Lorraine. Lorraine was a young pup of 50 when the Vanguards were starting here in Santa Clara. Lorraine was born in Santa Clara 100 years ago, right? 100 years ago. And Lorraine has remained a longtime resident of her birthplace and her hometown. She has worked as an accountant most of her life, counting the money when you go to Lake Tahoe, right?
Yep.
Yes, yes. She loves to visit new places, and you have traveled to almost every country in the world.
Correct.
Correct.
With his grandmother.
With his grandmother. She's belonged to several Portuguese organizations in Santa Clara and San Jose, and she volunteers and crochets hats and blankets for infants and local hospitals. Lorraine is an aunt, a great aunt, and a great-great aunt to many nieces and nephews of a loving family, and has lived during the most eventful century of this world's history, and has had the great fortune of witnessing the fastest change and progress in the history of mankind. Yes, she has.
Correct.
I was very much privileged to be at her surprise birthday party that her family put on for her family and friends at the SES Hall in Santa Clara. And there was a time of the event, and she was truly surprised when she walked in the door. And there was a time where different tables of people would stand up and talk about Lorraine. And I was just awestruck by this woman, that how many lives she touched, young, old, rich, poor, even the bus driver that drives her to Lake Tahoe from the senior center came with his wife to talk about his favorite client on the bus. So she is a phenomenal woman, has touched so many people in so many ways, nieces and nephews. Aunt Lorraine took me here for the first time. Aunt Lorraine showed me this. Aunt Lorraine lent my mom money for a house. Aunt Lorraine did this and that. I mean, the list went on and on. And she loves Santa Clara. Lorraine, you do. You've told me that. You love Santa Clara, and we love you. So we have a special gift for you, but I wanted you to say a few words to the city council, because I want you to tell them what you told me about
what?
The Valley of Heart's Delight.
Oh, yeah.
And how much you love that.
I love that name. It's a whole lot better than Silicon. And I hope that we will change it back to the Valley of Heart's Delight. But I don't think it'll ever be that way.
No. So we want to thank you for coming so much to come and help us celebrate your birthday with you.
Well, thank you very much.
And
remember, 100's just a number.
It is. It's
Just a number.
I also heard you just renewed your driver's license. Is that true?
Yeah. And I blame the state for doing a horrible job on that. They didn't even look to see how old I was. They gave me an additional 5 years to... That is so stupid.
Is there anything any
No, I don't
advice
want to say
for
anymore.
us?
I think I've said enough. And you people have a lot to do here.
Yes, you've heard that. So, okay.
I remember Dom for a long time ago. His grandmother was the best traveler I ever had, and that's true. She'd always say, "Wherever you're going, Lorraine, I'm going to go with you." And we went.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, but she's long gone, but she was a wonderful lady. And she's got a nice grandson over there. Note that I said grandson. Okay, I think I've talked enough.
No, very good. Well, we have a gift for you.
Oh, no.
And a proclamation.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
This is really something.
Would you like to come?
All right, I hope everybody will join along.
I think so. I think she likes to have a good time.
Thank you so much, Charles Frost, for that happy birthday. That was really, really special. Thank you, Lorraine, for coming so much, and thank you, Genevieve Yip, for arranging all of this on behalf of the mayor and council offices. We appreciate it. Thank you. All right. Next, we have the presentation of the Santa Clara Silicon Valley Power Scholarship Awards. And Larry Adams, or City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor. Just quickly, I mean, we just had a study session on Silicon Valley Power, and we heard what they do. As part of their operations, they also have a scholarship program, which was started in 2005. Actually, at that time, Councilmember Caserta introduced that item to the council. This scholarship is provided for tuition support for students who are entering into the fields of energy, science, technology, and related policy. And then applicants are evaluated by independent volunteer members of our academic and business community. And including this year's recipients to be recognized tonight, 42 students so far have been recognized, and they have received a total award of about $192,000. So that's a great involvement with the community. So to present today's students, let me invite Larry Owens, our Senior Division Manager in Silicon Valley Power.
Welcome, Larry.
Thank you, City Manager Basha.
I did.
Mayor, council, city staff, this scholarship program success relies on the efforts of volunteers from our community as evaluators. I want to first recognize these three independent representatives from our academic and business communities who volunteered to review all the applications and select the award recipients to be honored tonight. Members of this year's application evaluation committee were Jennifer Alcazar-Dorico, Public Relations at Santa Clara Unified School District. Also, Eversley Forte, Cultural Commission for the City of Santa Clara. Robert Owens, board member of the West Valley Mission Community College District. Also, we had an alternate standby, Bonnie Billings, the Director of Educational Media and Learning Resources. And I share Dominic's excitement, and I'd like to recognize all of them, including Evelyn Forte, who's here tonight.
Eversley is here.
Eversley.
Eversley. Take a bow.
Yes, Eversley. Of course, all this could not be possible without the hard work of our staff aide, Vula Margellis Brown, who was sitting next to me there, who has administered this program from the very beginning, all the hard work it takes to keep everything in line and going. And so I want everybody to thank Vula for her hard work on this program as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And now, it brings me great honor to recognize three outstanding student applicants this year who were chosen by this evaluation committee to receive scholarship grants of $5,000 each.
Wow.
All recipients recognized and awarded tonight have demonstrated an interest in pursuing a degree or education in the field of energy and science, technology, or policy, anything to move the energy space forward. We're very pleased by the interest that we've received this year from these students, and I'm delighted to take a moment to tell you a little bit about each one. The recipients, as your name is called, please come up. And Madam Mayor, if I can please have you come down and join us for individual photos, and then we will have a collective photo at the end with everybody. First, let me introduce Tiffany Madruga. Tiffany just finished her freshman year at Harvey Mudd College in Engineering and plans to continue there. Tiffany has participated in a variety of STEM-related activities, including a counselor at all-girls summer camp, which teaches how engineering and chemistry can make the earth more sustainable. Tiffany loves art, philosophy, design, music, and education. This semester, Tiffany was particularly intrigued by the challenges that involve harnessing solar power, especially in how to collect solar energy more efficiently. She says that her course of study is teaching her problem-solving skills, and I quote, "one of the main skills necessary for engineers to create products that will help ease the world's problems." Tiffany has been singing since she was in first grade and loved being able to teach students reading comprehension through a reading program called America Reads, America Counts. I'd like you to congratulate Tiffany on this award. My next applicant is Tamara Pantic. Although she could not be here tonight, I'd still like to talk about her accomplishments and her awards. Tamara just graduated from Santa Clara High School. Her strong interest in government and politics is demonstrated as she has served as class president and representative to the Santa Clara Unified School District Board of Education. She plans to study political science and international relations at UC Berkeley. She wishes, and as it says in her application, wishes to channel her current idealism and optimism into creating real-world solutions and influencing the progress of our society, particularly in regards to power, renewable sources of energy, and especially in public policy enabling energy progress. She's particularly focused on the effects of climate change and the need for smarter energy solutions at all. Tamara served on student government for 9 years, has served on the city's youth commission. She's also spent 3 years as an intern on a local congressional campaign. In recognition of that involvement, she participated as a youth candidate in the 2016 California Democratic Convention. Even though she could not be here today, please acknowledge her accomplishments from this award tonight. Our third recipient is Christine Yee. She just graduated from Wilcox High School and is planning to major in chemistry at the University of California at Santa Barbara. Christine likes chemistry because, as she put it, it gives her a fuller understanding of the ways of nature and use chemical reaction in ways that can provide society with an abundant and inexpensive energy to eventually replace the ever more expensive fossil fuels. She believes finding alternate fuel sources through better chemistry has the potential to carry our world into an age of sustainable prosperity and would help solve the global warming problem. Christine loves to play violin, volunteers at a local food bank, and is a volunteer at Kaiser Hospital. Please join me in congratulating Christine. Now, if you would please join me in a round of applause for all participants, and have council come down for a picture. Bula, would you please join us?
Okay, moving forward, we're moving to the consent calendar with all items being approved with one motion.
Mayor,
Is there any?
there was one more item.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry.
D.
Adopt a spot.
Yes.
One more item, city manager, adopt a spot.
Thank you, Mayor. We all know, and I don't have to say it, that Santa Clara is one of the best cities in the country, in the world, and beautiful city, and we try to keep it clean. So for that purpose, we have this program, Adopt a Spot. And to talk about that program just briefly is Deputy Director of Public Works, Dave Staub, who will also talk about not only what the program is, but how the companies can get involved and individuals can get involved. Dave?
Hi, Dave.
All right. Did you have the PowerPoint presentation? Yes. Is it on? Yes. Okay. All right. Well, first off, thank you for having me tonight. We're excited to highlight our Adopt a Spot program. We're always out looking for volunteers. Okay, so our Adopt a Spot, it's a community-based litter prevention program. It enables community groups, families, and other organizations to play an active role in keeping public spaces clean and beautiful by removing litter. So folks can adopt neighborhood blocks, city-owned lots and alleys, storm drain inlets, gutter lines and sidewalks, creek trails with Santa Clara Valley Water District approval, as well as bus stops with VTA approval. So how did it get started? For the last several years, we've been doing 2 annual cleanup events per year, the National River Cleanup and the California Coastal Cleanup. Community members wanted additional opportunities to participate because they really felt good about what they were doing. You know, removing trash is a great way to involve the community. They can actually see tangible results for what they're doing. The Adopt a Spot program allows participants the opportunity to select a convenient spot and set their own cleaning schedule and frequency. So how do you adopt a spot? You work with our staff to select a spot. We actually lend out the tools and safety equipment if folks are working in around the street, and then just have a cleanup campaign. They do report how much trash is collected. We come pick up the trash for them. Groups make a 1-year commitment to do at least 4 cleanups per year, and they're recognized with a custom sign posted near the spot. So far, it's in the last 2 years, we consider this to be a really successful program. We have 18 volunteer groups. We're definitely looking to expand that. We've had 44 cleanup events, which includes 445 volunteer hours, and we've removed 770 pounds of litter. And it also provides an opportunity for the city staff to work closely with community members. So we invite everyone to come out and be a community beautification superhero and join Litter-Free Lena and Clean Streets Karen to help clean up Santa Clara. So if you want more information on the program, the web address is there, or you can call the Public Works Department, and the phone number is on the slide. This is a list of the current volunteers that we have out adopting spots right now. Thank you to all of them. And with that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. I have a question for you from Councilmember Davis.
And thanks, Steve, for bringing this, because I went to the Health and Wellness Fair at the Senior Center, and I saw the little booth, and I said, oh my gosh, look what we have. So do we have any intentions, or are we going to be at the Art and Wine Festival for people to sign up, our residents?
Yes.
Yes.
We table at just about every city event.
Everywhere. Okay,
Yep.
great.
Yes.
That's all I want to know.
They won't
Now
necessarily be in costume, but
Karen and Lena are always
costume?
there. Yeah.
Okay.
that was from the library's Comic-Con.
That's awesome. Well, okay, well, they can
We'll
be
all come if
superheroes
you're in
for Art and
costume.
Wine. Okay. But thank you, Dave, so much for this.
Sure.
Thank you very much. I don't see any other questions. Okay. Next, we have thank you for that. Next, we have the consent calendar. All items are approved with one motion. I have a card to pull two items, and that's 13A4 and 13A5. Are there any items from the council to be pulled? Seeing none, are there any from the audience? If you'd like to pull an item. I do have, Ken, I have 13A4 and 5. So motion to accept the balance of the consent calendar. Is there a second? Motion second. Lights on the motion. That passes unanimously. All right, next we have public presentations. Rod, do you have any cards?
Why would anyone?
All right, Betsy Migas, you'd like to come forward, please? Good evening.
Good evening, Betsy Magus. This week's VTA Bicycle and Pedestrian Agenda discusses the revised VTA Bicycle Plan for 2017. Their previous plan was 2008. I'd like to read a couple of excerpts from the summary of that plan. VTA received comments from over 800 individuals. Key themes include support for bicycle paths, bicycle bridges and undercrossings, green paint on bicycle lanes, painted buffered bicycle lanes, and physically separated bicycle lanes, desire for more obvious trail entrances and improved connections to trails, desire for improved access to schools and transit stations, strong desire for closing gaps in the existing bicycle network, need for improved infrastructure at intersections, interchanges, and railway crossings, more and better bicycle maintenance of bicycle lanes and paths, specifically sweeping and vegetation trimming. And they go on to discuss priority bicycle ways in their plan. Priority bikeways include major trails, on-street corridors, including Heading Street and Prinridge Avenue, and some expressways. I know that the city of Santa Clara is also about to update its own bicycle and pedestrian plan, and I ask that as we do so, we work to complement the VTA plans and to incorporate them, as well as to incorporate our own safe routes to schools reporting, and that we look ahead towards the complete streets requirements, which will come with the Measure B funds for pavement maintenance and improvements. That some of that may involve doing some of the engineering proactively in advance of pavement maintenance. I also understand that we are currently preparing a trail plan separately from our on-street bike plan. Even if we have these as separate documents or treat them separately for administrative reasons, I would ask that we make sure that they relate to each other in a way which will provide a safe and connected network to encourage bicycles as a mode of transportation. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Councilmember O'Neill has something to say.
Just
I
in
don't know if
general.
she had a question for you, Betsy.
No, I
Okay.
appreciate Betsy coming in. Betsy is a very strong advocate for cyclists and for pedestrians also. So she's right. We will be starting the BPAC, which is a Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, which meets on Wednesday afternoons every other month. We will be beginning shortly by the end of summer to work on the Creek Trail plan, and we are going to have a lot of public outreach and participation at the beginning of that plan. When we have hired a consultant to work on that. So I encourage Betsy and everybody else and anybody else at home or in the audience that wishes to participate with that. And we do definitely want to have that be very integrated with the bike and pedestrian plan. That right now we are in the process of beginning to the process of finding a consultant that will work with us. And I've already had discussions with staff, and we know that there's, once again, there will be a lot more public input in that process. And, so we kind of have some varying opinions in this city about particularly bicycle lanes, so that's kind of one of those, sometimes not always unanimously valued items, which I think they're very important. But so I do encourage everybody to come, and we will certainly be looking at what VTA has already done. So thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you. Is there any other member of the public like to speak? Please come forward. Welcome.
Hi there. Speaking of trails, I don't believe we've ever gotten the information on the San Tomas Aquino Creek Trail, and that's still not fixed. Did we ever get the information on the megatometers that we were owed way back when? Of where's the documentation on when those were approved? Did we ever get that information that was owed to us? We get lots of other things, but I guess that wasn't a pet project from a particular assistant city manager. So could we finally get that information, or when do we think it is? That's long overdue. We still need to get that rerouted correctly so that is ADA compliant, because that's still not been done. Additionally, we had a fireworks celebration that I was very, very upset to hear that our public utilities paid for that. I would like to know how much that cost, and why the fact that our utilities, we weren't told we paid for that. I think that before, it's not a necessary service, and before we should be asked if we want to opt in to pay for that. So I would recommend that before our money is used for blowing up things, we should have the opportunity to opt in or the opportunity to opt out. So you keep raising our rates. You just had a long presentation I watched at home. We're talking about reserves. The city's on the verge of bankruptcy, although people here don't want to admit that. You have an unfunded pension liability that nobody wants to talk about. Haven't even disclosed the unfunded medical liability that's still not on the balance sheet. And you're spending money frivolously on fireworks. Yeah, it's nice to have a celebration, but how much does it cost? We need to exercise some real fiscal responsibility. And we keep raising our rates, and there's a lot of people that even a little makes a huge difference. We had it hidden when we did super events. Now we're having SVP pay for those types of things, and it comes out without being disclosed. And I think that's the wrong thing to do to the public. We talk about having an open, transparent government that's not being open or transparent or even honest. So how much did it cost? And the fact that it failed, are we getting a refund? That was really disappointing. So let's get our creek trail open. Let's stop hiding costs. I don't remember ever seeing that on any disclosure to how much that cost. Thank you very much.
I can speak about the fireworks. The Silicon Valley Power has funded them just about every year, and I've probably said it at least 8 times at the park that it's sponsored by Silicon Valley Power. So there's a community, I don't know, city manager, did you want to talk?
As far as
answer that question
yeah,
about our fireworks.
One of the questions was there was that glitch this year, and yes, we are talking to the vendor about some refund.
It was a technical difficulty in the
technical
fireworks
problem,
that nobody
and,
could have
there was
anticipated.
one last year also,
right?
so we are in negotiations with the vendor.
Right. Okay. So we have what the cost was of the fireworks, and
yeah, we can give the exact number unless
bring that for next week.
Yeah,
as just an information item. Put
we'll
it on the
provide
consent
that to you
calendar
next
for
week,
information
yes.
item. Thank you very much.
Right.
And then the Creek Trail is coming back. Is it next week? I think. Is it next week
Mayor,
on the 18th?
we requested that we come back after your break because we've continued to pursue that, and we are working with Homeland Security.
Right, I saw some of the emails that it's going to take a couple of weeks to get some information back.
Right,
so.
and because of the time frames, I mean, it won't be ready by the 18th.
Right.
We wanted to fully bake it, and we also met with the Bicycle Coalition, and we have their input, so we'll pull all that together and bring you a recommendation.
I know there's been ongoing meetings with the police chief and others at the trail, with the Bicycle Coalition.
Right.
I've talked to them myself. Councilmember O'Neill's been out there.
That's correct.
Everyone's been out there.
It's
We're
not
really
lost
trying to
on us.
solve
We
the
are working on
situation.
it.
So after the break is fine. Next council meeting, after that, there's a month break before we have another council meeting, so it's just a matter of timing for that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other member of the public wanting to speak? All right. Next, we have our consent items pulled for discussion, and I think, Ken, you had the first item, which is item A4, adoption of a resolution ordering the vacation of the sidewalk easement and landscape improvement and maintenance easement at 3325 and 3355 Scott Boulevard, and authorization for recordation thereof, and then the APN numbers. Yes?
Yeah, I did take a look at that. I suggest that we maintain that, or keep the easement and not give it away, not to vacate it. It's basically what I understand from the property development agreement, or the property description. It's roughly 30 feet, and I assume that sidewalk will still stay there. Is that right? Yeah, okay. I'm sure the sidewalk will stay there, but evidently they're going to remove some of the landscaping, the easement. We need to save those because the city is in flux, especially this is out in the industrial section, commercial section, and we need those large right-of-ways in the future because we need trees to keep the city about 10 to 15 degrees cooler to reduce the heat island effect. So those large easements are helpful in doing that. Those trees will be dust palletives and will break that north wind in the winter, which will help pedestrians and cyclists. Benefits everybody walking as well. It will also allow utility trucks to completely get off the street if we were to widen the sidewalks. If we follow some of the recommendations of building a vibrant city that are outlined in Jane Jacobs' book, The Death and Life of Great American Cities, sidewalks should be a minimum of 20 feet wide to 30 feet when we start getting into mixed developments, which we are trying to advocate in the city according to our general plan. So I think it's short-sighted to vacate these large easements, and if we do one, there's will be a domino effect. On the next property down, as you go down the street, they'll all want to do it. So we need to talk about this, and to reduce maintenance for the commercial properties, let's have them put in drought-tolerant landscapes without the lawns, so we can get into the sustainable mode that we've all been talking about. So I think that's all I've got, right? Yes.
So on that one, City Manager, would you like to respond to that?
Yes, just to clarify, we are not just giving up sidewalk easements away or landscaping easements away. As part of the development, certain things are relocated within the development as they fit the development plans. So new easements are obtained, and these current existing easements become surplus, so to speak, and we don't need them anymore. And those are given back to the developers from who we got the easements to begin with. So it's not like we're just giving up sidewalk or landscaping.
Okay.
Follow-up
Sir?
question?
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, by vacating, does that allow the buildings to move closer to the street?
Well, the buildings still have to meet the setback requirements set by the Community Development Department. So all that development has been looked at. Let's not go back and
No,
forth.
but just
right.
for clarification, does it allow the building to get closer to the street in these instances out in the commercial area?
Well, I mean, all those plans have been approved by the City Council as part of the development plan, and it's shown where it should be.
All right, thank you. There are questions from the council? Is there a motion? Motion to approve this item, second. Lights on the motion. That passes unanimously. The next item we have is approval to delegate authority to the city manager, contract administrator, executive director, executive officer, or as designee to approve project-related documents and infrastructure maintenance-related agreements between July 19th, 2017 to August 21st, and to direct the city manager, contract administrator, executive director, executive officer to submit a report on actions taken during the council recess at a city council, sports and open space authority, housing authority, successor agency meeting in September. Yes.
Yeah,
Ken.
very short. I posed this item. I think the public business needs to be conducted in this forum. And I suggest you just continue those items, whatever happens during your break, just bring it back to our city council meeting.
Thank you. Councilmember Davis.
I'm actually in agreement with you on that one. The last time we did this, we had a problem with some things that were done through the Stadium Authority. So is there some way that we can find out what's in the queue or what is there that we can have a conversation about before we give 4 weeks of authority to the city manager? And that's only because I have a hinky feeling from the last time I've been hit with this. So is there some way that we could understand what projects are needed to be approved or documents or whatever? Sure. Is there a list that we could get?
Madam Mayor, no,
Yes.
we don't have a list. First of all, let me clarify, the Stadium Authority items are not included in this request. These are the SOSA, Sports and Open Space, Housing, and the successor agency items. And we've done that over the last several years. I'm not aware of that specific incident, but like I said, Stadium is not included in this delegation of authority. These are routine budgeted projects, and this is just because the council is in recess for a month or so. This is just to keep the projects ongoing. These are approval of plan specs or advertising for bids. Then we bring a report back in September, whatever thing was approved by the city manager.
City manager, if they're routine items, don't you already have authority to approve routine items? I mean, would these be items that would normally come to the city council, so they're not quite routine items? Is there a limit? We did have a bad experience in the past, not with you, but with others that had taken it a little bit too far.
Yeah.
In terms of the public. So can
Understood.
you maybe give us weekly reports with,
Sure.
we don't like to give carte blanche to anything that should be approved by the city council.
That's fine.
So
we can provide you, I mean, during your recess also, we can provide you weekly updates, but these are not out of the ordinary items, like I said. These are certain things, some contracts have to be approved because just to continue with the projects, and it'll be within if it's authority delegated to the city manager, the limits that are there that I can approve anyway.
are they like consent calendars?
These are primarily consent type of
Not the
things.
type of consent calendars items that we
No,
pull
it
for the
won't be like
millions
that.
of dollars, but
Judgment will be applied if it's a big ticket item. I'm not going to approve the International Swim Center, for example.
well, if you find funding, go ahead and approve it.
That could be bad. So city attorney, next question, city attorney. So this is best practices that we do, even though that we don't have these, because we're required by the charter to have 2 council meetings a month, and then we have like this little break, the way they kind of separate this. So we do not have a council meeting, but is there a way that if something did come up that we could do a council meeting or a special meeting or? I'm just asking what is.
I'm not familiar with all of the previous resolutions and previous authorizations. You mentioned best practices. This is fairly common.
Okay.
To have to authorize an executive director to have contract signing authority during a legislative break. And typically and I don't know if, I've been looking through the charter and the code for any standing authority for emergency purchases. Typically, the city manager would have emergency purchasing authority. I'm looking for it, I can't find it. But certainly it's very standard procedure for an organization that has a legislative body that approves contracts to authorize routine contracts under a certain dollar amount to be signed without legislative action. And typically there is authorization during legislative breaks so that for routine items, and typically there's standing authority for any kind of emergency purchase, which usually then has to be brought back to the legislative body. So I will continue to research what your standing authorizations are, but this type of authorization is certainly not out of the ordinary.
Okay, it's just that we got burned, and I'm very cautious about stuff like that.
I understand the standing authority from the stadium authority, and I would recommend looking into that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
That's exactly what I was going to bring up. We've had some very bad experiences in the past of having some real monkey business go on in these breaks. And I was not accusing that you would do that, but it's always very uncomfortable to give carte blanche when there's, the roosters come home to roost when there's nobody watching what's going on in the hen house, and it gets a little scary sometimes. So, especially when we don't have a city manager, we have a contractor, we have, we don't even have an acting city manager, we don't have an interim city manager, we have a city manager who's a contractor, so, we don't have really anybody in charge. It's like everybody's acting, playing, or interim, so I don't know how all that works with a charter either. So unless it's something that's an emergency, can this be set up in such a way that if it can't wait, you do it, otherwise it waits till you come back? I mean, we ought to really think about, or don't take a month off or something. I mean, the house isn't in order to take a month off is what I'm sort of thinking about. We have a situation that is taking a month off the best thing to do for the city. So think about that too. Thank you.
It's just council meetings a month off. I think the people will still be working in the month. So is there a motion to approve this with weekly reports from the city manager?
Second.
Motion second. And that passes unanimously. Thank you. All right. Next we have the item that was pulled up, which is the
21B.
So we have reports of members and special committees, 21B, Ad Hoc Affordable Housing Working Group, request for council feedback on the proposed fee levels and direction to the city manager to prepare an ordinance for council consideration. City manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Very excited to present this to you. A lot of effort has gone into it. You had asked the committee, the Affordable Housing Working Group, to look into this and work with the stakeholders, and there were at least 4 sessions with the stakeholders, and it's a very collaborative effort, a lot of discussion, a lot of agreements to disagree, but at the same time, I mean, there's a final collective recommendation, and I'll ask Director of Community Development, Andrew Crabtree, to walk us through the process and the recommendations.
Thank you. Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. So the city is in the process of developing an impact fee for affordable housing. It would be an impact fee on new development that would be used to afford the production, to fund the production of affordable housing in our community. And I'll just walk through the process a little bit so far. As mentioned, the City Council convened an ad hoc affordable housing working group, and I'll be presenting their recommendations. I'll be looking for council direction on a couple of questions that did come out of that process that were unresolved, and we're looking for input. And then we're seeking direction from the City Council to proceed with preparing an ordinance that would bring back for council consideration. So when we were last, so this process has been going on for a while. We were last in front of the City Council on February 21st, which is when the City Council designated the Affordable Housing Working Group and referred this to them for input. Prior to that, we had conducted outreach through a series of stakeholder and community meetings. And there was also, prior to that as well, the preparation of a nexus study that established sort of the legal range in which we could explore an impact fee and what would be legally supportable. So those were prior considerations. As mentioned, the Affordable Housing Working Group had 4 meetings. The working group was chaired by Vice Mayor Dominic Caserta and also included council members Kolstad and Mahan. They met 4 times the last evening in May. Other members on the working group included representatives of advocacy groups, affordable housing builders, commercial, non-affordable and market rate affordable housing developers, commercial builders, industry associations, business industry associates, and so forth, union representation, League of Women Voters, all had a participant. It was really a very open group. The members of the public who attended were also fully engaged and able to participate. All the information was posted on the website that was shared with the group. Minutes from all those meetings are on the website, and then fairly extensive minutes from the final meeting were included in your packet tonight. We asked the working group to kind of go through a series of topics and give us guidance on those. The working group was able to come to a consensus on most issues. For example, here on the issue of for sale residential, the group came to a consensus that the city should have 12.5% as its requirement for inclusionary affordable housing units within a for sale residential project. And they established, they gave a recommendation for what in lieu fees should be. As part of this, projects could meet the inclusionary requirement by providing units offsite or dedicating land as part of the recommendation. There was some discussion about what the level of affordability should be for inclusionary units, and part of the group's recommendation was that there be a range, that projects that include units that are more affordable or affordable to folks of lower income would have a lower percentage requirement to correspond with that. Looking at rental residential, the group forwarded to the City Council a range of 10 to 15%. And so this is one of the items that we're looking for council direction on, is to what should be the city's standard for the percentage of affordable units included as in a rental residential project. And along with that was a range for the impact fee level of $17 to $20. I'll mention
Vice Mayor Caserta, did you have a question on that? Oh, you just put your light on. All right, sorry about that.
Sorry. And I'll mention that as part of this discussion, the group really looked at what other cities were doing in the area, and included in your packet, there was a summary sheet of sort of all the different cities around us, what their fee levels are, that the working group found to be helpful in forming their recommendations. So going on to the non-residential side, again, the group came to a consensus on a number of things to bring forward. And certainly when we say it's a consensus, we recognize that not every working group member fully supported everything, or would be their individual preference, but they sort of viewed this as an appropriate compromise in most cases. So by type of development, whether it be retail, hotel, office, and so forth, you can see there are different fees that are recommended to the council, fee levels. And then continuing on with non-residential, light industrial, and low-intensity uses such as data centers and warehouses that would generate a relatively low demand for affordable housing, have a lower recommended fee. There are a number of land use types that the group recommend be exempt from the impact fee. That would include anything for a single family or duplex or accessory dwelling unit type residence. Commercial square footage within a mixed use development, and that's defined as sort of a vertical mixed use with a small, less than 20,000 square foot component of commercial space, sort of ground level retail, some assembly uses, daycare, nursery, hospitals, and then a provision that the council could make other, determine other uses should be exempt as well. And then there was discussion around how to implement the fee, in particular, how to address projects that are in the pipeline, ongoing projects. So there's two parts to that. The first was that any project that can demonstrate site control at the time the fee is adopted would not be subject to the impact fee, provided that they are in construction within 3 years. So it's sort of like if you've already done developed your project, you've acquired the site, you've kind of locked in your costs, not to change the rules midstream for those types of projects. They had this recommendation. And then the second was for new projects going forward, when should the effective date be? There was a recommendation that the fee would basically not be in effect for 6 months after adoption. So a new project, even if it didn't have site control, wouldn't be subject to the fee. From 6 to 12 months, a project that would pay a portion of the fee. And then again, the group had sort of two different recommendations. They couldn't come to an agreement on this last issue, which was sort of like how long should this sort of rolling out of the fee be extended. And so for council consideration, the question is, should it be a 12 to 18 months, 2/3 of the fee, or basically at 12 months is the full fee in effect? Two options we're presenting to the council. Some other considerations that were discussed by the group was that the fee would be due prior to an issuance of an occupancy certificate of occupancy for a project, so pretty late in the development project. That reduces the carrying costs for the developer so that it's easier for them to pay the fee. The fee would be established in a way so that it's automatically updated annually based on CPI, real estate values, construction costs, and so forth. That there would be credit granted for an existing square footage that's removed and replaced, and that we would have the process come back basically with a year after the ordinance is in place and review if the fee levels are having an impact, an unexpected or undesired impact on development activity. So with that, these were the two issues that we're seeking input from the council. On the rental residential side, what should the city's affordability level be set at? Somewhere in the range of 10 to 15% was the recommendation of the group. And what should the in lieu fee be, with the recommendation that be somewhere between 17 and 20? And then on the implementation side, should the rollout be extended up to 18 months or only for 12 months with a partial fee? I'll mention that there were a number of items of correspondence that have been received, some of it which are in the packet, others which came in up till today, and will be available as post-agenda items. And those basically represent different stakeholders, participants, sort of advocating for different positions around this, and I'm sure we'll hear from them further during public testimony. So with that, staff is requesting direction from the council on those issues and recommending that the council give us direction to go ahead and prepare an ordinance so that we can move forward this important objective of the city of having this fee in place. Thank you.
I have a question, but staff or city attorney?
Yeah, I'm seeing this presentation, and there's a couple concepts in here that if direction is given to write an ordinance, I would also seek some clarification from the council about what they would want to do. The first question would be this concept of site control being a regulator of the pipeline, and I'm not familiar with how I would define such a thing in an ordinance, because I'm not really sure what was meant by that. And then the other comment I would have would be on the collection of trying to collect a fee at certificate of occupancy. It's not a normal time when you collect a fee, and my past experience has been that you get an enormous amount of pressure to issue a certificate of occupancy, especially when there's people waiting to move into a project, and it becomes an extremely difficult trying to withhold a certificate of occupancy in exchange for especially a large fee becomes a difficult enterprise.
Is that when fees are collected?
Fees are collected
like
at
park fees, for instance. Is
no,
that when they're collected?
Typically, fees are collected at permit issuance
right,
or at permit application.
Yeah, building permit.
Okay. Do you have a question, Councilmember Kessler?
I'd like to make some comments, and then I have some questions.
Okay, go ahead with your questions first. I have questions too, so. And anyone else has questions?
Yeah, so just questions right now?
Yeah, just questions first.
Can you, Andrew, can you clarify, wasn't also one of the recommendations that this working group would revisit this in a year, is that correct?
Yes, so that was part of the recommendation, was that we come back within a year and have some process like this. It could be the exact same people or whoever, but we invite a working group to review the fees. And I think it's within 1 year of sort of the fees adoption, so that we've had an opportunity to see how it's being implemented.
And can you comment on the two city attorneys' questions on site control and collection of a fee, as he wasn't at any of those meetings? So,
well, the site control, use of site control goes back to the Planning Commission recommendation on this. That was something they recommended, and they did provide some criteria. I think the concept is that we would look for some sort of contractual evidence of a contractual relationship between the developer and the property owner, and that would be the basis on using this. I don't know I think it's been used in other cases here, but it is kind of an unusual thing as well. So we can explore that further through the development of an ordinance and see if we can come up with language that the attorney is comfortable with, and if not, then we can come back when the ordinance comes back and explain that. And then related to the certificate of occupancy, this was something that came out of the working group recommendation. I think staff had initially proposed at issuance of building permits, as that is kind of the standard process. But in the working group process of sort of coming to a consensus, that later date was put forward as a recommendation. And so it gives the developer more time. They have less time, but they have to carry the cost. It's of that benefit. I recognize there can be pressure, as mentioned by the attorney, but it's ultimately up to the council how they want to apply the fee.
and when appropriate, I'd like to make comments.
Okay. Andrew, I have a question. It was brought to my attention that there was a proposal by some labor unions that there be provided in this ordinance an incentive for residential developers to use to pay standard wages or prevailing wage and utilize apprentices for 20% of the work, and then in exchange they would get the developer would get a 25% reduction in affordable housing fees this would be a voluntary use of payment of prevailing wage and use of apprentices. So was that discussed, and why is it not in the recommendations?
So that was proposed at one of the working group meetings, and I would say mostly the consensus of the working group, not everybody, but the majority view was that it was sort of outside the purview of that working group to take on that issue, and that the city council should address it separately and defer to
So they punted it to us here
Madam
this
Mayor, this was
evening.
discussed at the last meeting as chair, brought up by one of the labor groups, and that was Councilmember Mahan's comments that was captured by Andrew, but I made sure that it would be brought here and discussed tonight as well. So I hope it is discussed at this time tonight.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Are there any other questions of Andrew? Councilmember O'Neill.
Thank you. So thank you for the very interesting presentation, Director Crabtree, and I had read the report, and on a lot of the items it kind of looked like, there was a range that was proposed, and we did a lot of splitting the difference, which I understand, compromise, is how we often, how we have to get things done sometimes, but so could you give maybe give a little bit more color on kind of like what the decision on like doing the 12.5% inclusionary requirement instead of really it seems kind of fun. I would have thought maybe we would have gone for 15, but can you kind of capture what was a little bit more of what your take on what the feeling of the committee or the argument behind going with 12.5 rather than the 15?
Sure, absolutely. So, as you're aware, our current policy is 10% for sale projects, and that's been, I think, the city's policy for some time. And in looking at what other jurisdictions are doing in the context of an impact fee like this, generally it's in there are some at 10%, there are some at 15%, there are some in the middle. So I think the group was kind of focused on that 10 to 15% range. And really what you have is a compromise. I mean, there were certainly folks in the group that wanted the 15%, and that's reflected in some of the correspondence we've received. And there were also folks that wanted very much it to be the 10%. I think a lot of the discussion around the table was between those who everyone sort of acknowledged that they shared an interest in producing housing and affordable housing in this community, and that there was benefit to that. It was really sort of weighing what would be something that would generate revenue for the city to go produce affordable housing, but not have enough of an impact on housing development that housing development would slow down or stop as a result. That there was a desire to be able to continue producing housing and capture as much of a fee as possible at the same time. And so in the group kind of having that conversation and recognizing differences in how, needs, that they sort of came to that as a comfort level to put forward that recommendation on the for sale side. As we progressed to talking about the rental side, the group really kind of dug in a little bit more, and those that were advocates for 15% said, they weren't comfortable with 12.5 or 10 and vice versa. So that's why it was brought to the council in the way it was.
And Teresa, if I can add to some color and Pat Canis, because I think this is important for the group. We had 4 meetings collectively, almost 15 hours, robust public conversation from different ideological groups, different specters occupationally, and the common theme was consensus and compromise, and we really came together. In areas we didn't, it was close in a range that we wanted to give you. I mean, we rolled up our sleeves on this. I was really proud of the work of the members, very proud of them, so.
Okay, thank you for those comments. Andrew, the only other thought, because I know reading the reports, there's always this, and it's kind of like the real conundrum a little bit on this, is was there discussion, or is there any study or anything that talks about, because I know I've been hearing some things, I know we're going to talk about the minimum wage next week, but I'm like hearing, seeing more reports on, updates on minimum wage in a way like for these fees. When do you get to like a tipping point when now it becomes like a disincentive? Is there any data on that?
Yeah. So I think the simple answer is that there isn't anything that directly answers that question that I'm aware of that's available. The Nexus study touched on it and said there's basically, if as you raise an impact fee, there's different ways that cost gets, whether it's passed on to future buyers as a higher cost, or it becomes lowers the value of the property at the time of purchase. Or does it result in basically cheaper construction, right? Then the developer kind of adjusts that. You lose other things. So those are sort of three things that were put forward as possible impacts. I think some of the members of the committee who are in the industry said that timing is critical. That if you have enough time, the market could adjust to a fee. But it's really giving the if you made the fee effective tomorrow, a lot of development would stop right now because those projects would no longer be financially feasible. But if you know the fee is out there 3-4 years in the future, then you have time. Developers would have time to adjust and accommodate most of it. But there were a few points in the discussion, at least, where one of the representatives on the working group said, if we go there, I think that's going to really stop our ability to produce this type of housing in particular, whether it be for sale or some higher density, et cetera. So.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Davis.
Andrew, for the affordable housing inclusionary requirements, 2 cities are reviewing what they did in the past. Some seem to be going a little higher, some to be dropping. And then there are 2 cities that had percentage of sale price. Did they look into that? Because I wasn't part of this ad hoc committee. So did you look at the total sale price versus a set square foot price?
There was some discussion in those groups about that. And ultimately, the group didn't seem to have an appetite to go there and wanted to keep it a little bit simpler in terms of the fees. But one thing is that if you look at the for sale rates here, you'll see that there's different product types. And so that's capturing to some degree what those sale prices would be. And as you get into the higher sale price products, the per square foot fee is going up. So I think that was one way the group kind of decided to address that concept.
Okay. And I guess my next question was, to the city attorney, how could we, what as far as at capturing the costs after 12 months or 18 months, whose responsibility would that be? I mean, you're saying the pressure would be you. Okay.
Well, until you had certificate of occupancy, you could not close a deal on any unit, and you couldn't rent it out. So there would still be some leverage to collect the fee, but it's not typically the time that you collect the fee. I mean, you can write it that way, and I've dealt with things like this that have fees collected at certificate of occupancy. I'm just pointing out that it becomes very difficult when you delay it to that stage, when you're not otherwise collecting fees, because what you have then is you have a whole bunch of people that want to move in, and they start putting pressure on either the council or the city manager or somebody to say, hey, I want to move in. I haven't built the housing, or I haven't, paid the fee or whatever, and then you're stuck, and then it gets delayed, and there's pressure. So it's, if you're really mean to collect the fee, it's easier to do it at the building permit stage. That's my only comment. I mean,
if I may add on,
you can write it that way. You can say we will not release you can put the condition in the permit. We will not release the condition of occupancy until the fee is paid, but it becomes more difficult to do.
Okay,
if I may, I've had some experience with that, and particularly when it's a for sale, like a townhouse project. Someone's bought their unit, they're eagerly waiting to move in, and then they go and it looks done, but they're told, oh, the city won't let you move in. So that's when we then hear that kind of pressure the most. But
I know, and I think I would be pretty upset if I had to go through this collecting money and trying to get into a place, and we already have a housing issue, so it just seems like it's like another kind of layer. So, okay, thank you.
Vice Mayor Caserta? Oh, Councilmember O'Neill.
Thank you, Andrea. I wanted to ask another question. As we had our study session at 5 o'clock with our representatives and our director, John Rockamo from Silicon Valley Power. We talked a lot about the data centers and what a big part of our load with SVP that they are. And we also know that they are very capital intensive, but very labor non-intensive. if that's a word. So did you look at like the relative number of employees? Because I know that's one of our primary areas of industrial growth, actually, is the data centers. I know it's the lowest fee, but was there some kind of calculation done on what you estimated? Like, because I know a lot of this nexus is about how many employees are coming in, and how many of those employees might need housing.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that it was more of a qualitative discussion, that recognizing that those issues, that the fee should be lowered, and looking at that, we had that $5 sort of working off of that, but a sense that they should still contribute something, and we would certainly, I'll take that as input, that we should go back and really hone in and make sure we're within the range of nexus on that number.
Okay, that would be great.
I would imagine things would average out for these as well. Okay, any other questions for Andrew? Okay. City Manager, did you have anything before I go to the public? I have a host of cards here. All right, let's get started. Josue Garcia and David Urhausen on deck. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Gilmer, and thank you, City Council members, for allowing me to speak here before. And according to the rules, I'm supposed to say that I'm a lobbyist, and so
thank you for doing that.
There it is. I feel better now. Yes. Well, thank you.
We absolve you. Okay. Good.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. I want to thank you for allowing me to speak, but I also want to point out that we sent a letter yesterday, and Mayor, you spoke a little bit about it earlier, and I want to make a clarification. The clarification, we are not including apprentices on that request, on our proposal. It's just for when workers, when the developers or contractors get a reduction on a 25% reduction on fees, they will need to pay area standard wages. And let me tell you that some cities are already doing this. The city of San Mateo, Redwood City, San Bruno, San Mateo County, and Foster City as well. And let me tell you, one of the main reasons that we are asking for this is that it's getting harder and harder for our workers, construction workers, to compete, union and non-union workers. We are doing a study, and the early data shows that around 30% of the workers in construction, only 30% of the workers in construction are local workers, meaning like Santa Clara County. Almost or a little bit more than 70% come from far away from here. And one of the reasons is that we cannot compete with Texas wages, Arkansas wages. I'm assuming that $10 an hour, it's a lot of money in Texas, but $10 an hour is nothing here. By the city requesting developers to pay area standard wages that will allow construction workers to live here and their families. If you talk to school districts, they will tell you that they are losing a lot of families, a lot of students, because people cannot afford to live here, so they have to go out of the area. Talk to any district that you want. I talk to them all the time, and that's what they report. So that is our recommendation, and I hope you can approve it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. David Urhausen, and then Walter Correa on deck. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. David Urhausen, Political Director of the South Bay Labor Council, representing 101 affiliated unions and over 100,000 working men and women and their families in the county. And I'm also a registered lobbyist with the City of Santa Clara. Thank you for ensuring working families have a voice in crafting the city's affordable housing impact fees by including representatives from labor in the committee. We strongly advocate for the city to adopt a new policy on residential and non-residential impact fees. Specifically, we support the consensus items proposed in the committee, a $25 per square foot impact fee or a 15% voluntary inclusionary rate for rental housing developments, and including an incentive for residential construction projects to pay area standard wages by granting a 25% reduction in affordable housing impact fees for projects that voluntarily agree to pay area standard wages. Silicon Valley's rising inequality and lack of protective housing policies for vulnerable populations has resulted in the skyrocketing of home prices and rents, with average rents in the area for a two-bedroom apartment approaching $3,000. We believe that the city's impact fees are a critical component in creating an affordable housing program that is both financially viable and commensurates with the impact fees in cities across the region. We also believe the city can structure impact fees in such a way to provide incentives for developers to pay for area standard wages and help create more high-paying jobs. If a reasonable developer voluntarily chooses to pay its construction workers an area standard wage, more workers will be able to afford housing, helping to decrease the overall need to create more market rate housing, or more below market rate housing. By rewarding responsible residential developers with a 25% reduced housing impact fee, we can help high-road construction contractors and local high-skilled workers be more competitive at no cost to taxpayers. San Mateo County and cities of San Mateo, Redwood City, Foster City, San Bruno, and San Carlos have all already passed similar policies. Please do this. Thank you.
Thank you. Walter Correa? Here, gone, he left? Okay, thanks. Michelangelo Navarro, and then Corey Quevedo. Good evening.
My name is Michelangelo Navarro. I'm a resident of the city of Santa Clara and a proud member of Local 104. Thankfully, I have the opportunity through my apprenticeship program to make an area standard wages. By me being given a chance to earn area standard wages, I can afford to live in Silicon Valley, in particular Santa Clara. As you know, the job market is very robust with high income levels. My apprenticeship allows me to continue to work and live here, keeping me close to my family and my friends, as some friends and family had to move out to the valley due to the high cost of living. The cost of rent for me is extremely high. Having an affordable housing policy is not only helping me, but helps others. I understand that you are considering how to responsibly and thoughtfully adopt these new affordable housing policies. Connected to this issue are the opportunities to support families, sustainable wages, and maintaining a middle class in the city of Santa Clara. These are the reasons that I'm here tonight. Please support the proposed language. It is voluntary and will help ensure our city grows without displacing the families and communities that I love living in Santa Clara. Thank you.
Thank you. Corey, and then Kaylin Hui. Welcome.
Hi, good evening. My name is Corey Quevedo, and I am representing Plumbers Local Union 393. I lived in Santa Clara for the past 14 years and have worked on many projects throughout this city. Tonight is an important opportunity for the city to support new policies that address the critical need to build affordable housing that meets the needs of a variety of income earners. You also have the opportunity to help promote increased wages for working families without creating any new requirements for business at no cost to taxpayers. This is a win-win-win for workers, developers, and our city. I ask that you include the recommended language to demonstrate another example of this council's leadership on adopting sound public policy that benefits the entire city of Santa Clara and its residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Kaylin, and then Hannah Beach. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Kaylin Huey, and I'm currently an undergraduate at UC Davis studying landscape architecture, and I'm also a part of Greenbelt Alliance, and I serve as a South Bay campaigns intern. Greenbelt Alliance is a nonprofit environmental organization that serves to shape local and regional policy in order to encourage development in the right areas and protect our natural and agricultural spaces from sprawl development. I've lived in the Bay Area my whole life and would love to come back and work here in the future after I finish my undergraduate education due to the numerous amount of job opportunities, wonderful climate, and the diversity the area has to offer. In the future, I hope to work for public sectors or companies that strive to make the local community a better place. However, the housing affordability issue in the Bay Area makes it extremely difficult for myself to even consider living here again. However, the efforts that the city has taken in order to improve the affordable housing crisis is something that We at Greenbelt Alliance appreciates housing affordability matters to all citizens and allows people to live closer where they work, shorten commute time and lessen traffic, and decrease air pollution and greenhouse gases. We urge the city to move forward with the proposed rental residential impact fee of $25 per square foot and waive this fee for development providing at least 15% of affordable units on site. These fees and minimum affordability addresses the city's housing affordability needs as well as being economically feasible. We also support the 6-month grace period where the fee is not collected. However, we also propose that there should be a collection of a third of the fee between 6 to 12 months and collecting the full after 12 months. This is a reasonable amount of time between adoption and the fees taking place. We appreciate the city for taking steps to address the Bay Area's housing affordability challenges. We thank you for your time tonight, and we look forward to working together in order to make Santa Clara an even better place to live.
Thank you. Hannah, and then Christine Fitzgerald. Welcome.
Good evening. My name's Hannah Beach, and I also serve as Green Bay's South Bay intern. So as you know, Greenbelt Alliance is focused on a single challenge, how the Bay Area grows. We envision a Bay Area where the natural agricultural lands that provide so much to our region are protected and where everyone can live in a neighborhood that they are proud to call home. We appreciate the efforts the city has recently taken to explore new tools to support the creation of homes where we can all afford to live and to help alleviate the Bay Area's housing crisis. The lack of housing affordability in our region, and especially here in Santa Clara County, has tremendous impacts on the health, well-being, and pocketbooks of Bay Area families. It also has environmental repercussions. When people are no longer able to afford to live in communities near jobs and transit, they often move to less expensive neighborhoods at the edges of the region and beyond. This creates additional traffic congestion and pollution and creates new sprawl pressure in these areas, communities, and threatens the greenbelt lands that benefit us all. That's why we're excited to see the city move forward with these important proposals. Going forward, we urge the city to adopt a rental impact fee of $25 per square foot. We believe that the fee waivers should be only granted to developments that provide at least 15% affordable housing units on site. We support the staff's recommendation of a 6-month grace period. However, we believe that 1/3 of the fee should be collected between the months 6 and 12, and that the whole fee should be collected after the 12th month mark. In closing, I would like to reflect on how the city's actions affect me personally. 20 years ago, my parents moved into the Bay Area. Its climate, neighborhoods, and community-focused atmosphere offered an ideal place to raise their children. The Bay Area is the only place I can call my home. I am an ambitious and well-educated young person and want to contribute to an area that has given me so much. However, I'm finding that I might not be able to afford to live here post-graduation, especially if I choose to go into the public nonprofit sphere. I'm lucky to be living with my parents for the summer, but I know that that's not a long-term viable option. Thank you.
Thank you. Christine Fitzgerald, are you here? Christine, and then Dawn Jessup after that. A flexible microphone there for you. Welcome.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, that's good. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
Thanks,
great.
Debbie.
Hi, my name is Christine Fitzgerald. I'm with the Silicon Valley Independent Living Center. Our center frequently is impacted trying to help people find housing. Housing is such an area of focus right now. We often tell people, you may not get something here, but we may be able to help you find something farther out. I live in the work here, but the only reason that I can live and work here is because I'm in HUD facility. If it wasn't for the lower amounts that I pay each month, there's no way I could do it. Others are being affected too. I want to own my own home, but again, I can't do it because of the amount of housing we need and the housing we lack. Please help and adopt these recommendations and grow an ordinance that will support future housing. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, Christine. Dawn Jessup? And then after that, Neil Collins. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Mayor and City Council, it's an honor to be here. It's my first time speaking in front of you.
Oh, great.
And I appreciate the opportunity to do that. I've been in real estate for 35 years and born and raised in Santa Clara County. Family's been here since 1939. And we all know that affordable housing is a big issue, not only in Santa Clara, but in San Jose and in the whole state. And it continues to be an issue. I don't support the current way of funding it, however. I think we have a societal problem. I have 29, 30-year-old daughters that we moved to other areas because they couldn't afford to live here, and one's a teacher and one is a veterinarian. But we got them beautiful houses in and around the valley. But funding this as a societal issue should be done by a society and not on first-time buyers. And anytime in the Silicon Valley, when we built houses, we put on a fee like this, we can really imagine that the people who build the properties are not going to pass it on, but that's really not true. The builders are going to find a way to be profitable. They're going to find a way to build that fee into the property, thus making it less affordable for the people that are here, thus driving the middle income person out of it. And paying a minimum wage that helps people in the other society, in the trades and stuff, is a really good thing, and I appreciate that. But I think if we were to fund this, we just in Sacramento funded $200 to $300 million on a tax that was on deeds and those types of things. We passed a $950 million homeless thing in San Jose, California, on property tax owners. I think one of the things that we ought to consider is another way to fund this, which might be through sales tax, might be something that all of society could possibly participate in. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Neil Collins? Oh, he had to leave. Okay. Roma Dawson? Roma? And then after that, Mary Collins. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor and Council members, for establishing the ad hoc working group. And I'm speaking tonight as an individual and a member of the working group. And I want to let you know, I want to commend our chair, Vice Mayor Caserta, and I want to commend Director Crabtree and city staff for setting up a process where I felt very comfortable in speaking my own mind, and where I thought we could agree and disagree agreeably. I hope that you will support fees at the higher end of the ad hoc committee's working group's recommendation. Just as an example, on the residential, rental residential, my preference was $25. I think the higher end of 20 represents a good compromise. And, you're threading a very tiny, tiny needle tonight. The difference in addressing a critical affordability crisis in the valley and not stalling or killing development is not easy stuff. I said to one of the developers attending our working group that I wished he would build something affordable in Santa Clara because my husband wants to retire in the city of his birth and his mother's birth. So again, tough stuff. I hope you will respect the process. It was a very good one, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Mary Collins, and then Rick Smith after that. Welcome.
Welcome, and thank you for having this evening. I'm Mary Collins, the president of the League of Women
if you
Voters.
So we can hear you. Thank you.
I'm the president of the League of Women Voters of San Jose, Santa Clara, and again, I want to commend the city for taking on this very difficult issue, which is a quality of life issue for the whole community and the whole region. And I also want to commend you for setting up the committee, because I think it showed the sensitivity to having all the different components of the city at the table, helping to come to a consensus on what is it that will work for the city of Santa Clara. And I think that's an important value to be proud that you set up this working group. And we would like to direct you to accept the staff, to have your staff draft an ordinance that's accepting the ad hoc committee's recommendations. And again, I think I observed several of the committee meetings, the working group meetings, and we had representatives at all 4 meetings. And I do want to, again, really thank you for an open, transparent process which allowed the citizens to participate. That is a key League of Women Voters value. We reach our decisions on policy by consensus, and that is a very difficult thing to do. 4-1, 7-3 is much easier, but consensus takes a higher commitment. We would have supported higher fees on those in some instances, and I still would support in those ranges. I would support that you consider the higher end of those ranges rather than the lower. But the consensus that that group worked with, I think, needs to be valued and needs to be supported. So we support their recommendations.
Thank you for your testimony. Rick Smith? And then after Rick, we have Dixie Boss.
Mayor Gilmore, council members, thanks for having us here today. I currently serve as the president of the Santa Clara County Association of Realtors. I'm here on behalf of our 6,000 members, and we're asking that you reconsider the city staff's proposal for the residential sale impact fees that would go into affordable housing. But I did write a letter to you folks. I'm quoting mostly from the letter here, but the bottom line that we have here is we have a supply and demand issue. It was recent information that came out from the Bay Area Association of Governments in the county. Concluding in year 2016, we basically put out 5 new jobs for every house that was built, every housing start. We have a significant problem here, and adding fees to the actual cost of housing is not going to do anything to impact the actual cost of housing. When your supply is so tiny, the costs are going to continue to go up. If we were encouraging housing, if we were lowering fees, if we were doing things to build more housing, it would certainly have a better impact in the overall view of what's going on. And we support these things. I mean, we supported SB 3. It just passed. Just like Mr. Jessup said, it's going to raise about $300 million a year on recorded document fees. That was a good thing. CIR, we put our support behind that. But let's dispel a myth. The fees that are coming up here, these are not going to be paid for by the developers. These are going to be borne by the first-time home buyers. It's going to raise the prices of the property significantly enough so that a first-time home buyer is going to find it even more difficult. And just like the person that talked about his kids couldn't live in this area here, hey, one of my daughters moved out of state, upside to Reno, and that was really not a very fun thing for us. Both of them college graduates. They got married at Santa Clara University, and it was tough. But this is not necessarily the way to go about it. One other thing about BMR housing. The people that buy them, they're kind of locked in. I don't know if everybody's familiar with how this works, but they're not allowed to build equity there. They don't get the appreciation. When they eventually move, they're leaving with not much more than they started off with. Not necessarily as good as everyone thinks. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you. Thanks for your comments. Dixie, and then after Dixie, we have Pam Dorr. Welcome.
Hi, good evening. Mayor Gilmore and members of the City Council. Thank you so much to the city staff and the members of the working group for your efforts in bringing forth this recommendation for an impact fee. My name is Dixie Bowles. I'm with EAH Housing, an affordable housing developer, owner, and housing real estate management company since 1968. I'm also an 8-year resident of the community of Santa Clara City, living in the Old Quad neighborhood. And I've also had the pleasure of building 2 affordable housing developments within a half-mile radius of this magnificent city hall. Your leadership in supporting affordable housing over the years is tremendous. And every single available dollar that was available to affordable housing developers to build units, you put out on the street, and we did our best to build as many units as we could. But the dissolution of the RDA, which was the main source of funding in which we used to leverage many other sources of funding throughout the state, federal, regional government agencies, has really made it a lot challenging. And so I've been happy to be part of, personally, working my own time with the Santa Clara bond measure, but also in looking at and supporting this working group and the recommendations that they make in this working group. More specifically, our company does support the 15% rental inclusionary requirements, also the fee level on the higher end for the per square footage fee, and also the grace period that was discussed and come to a consensus with lots of compromise from all of the members of the working group. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak for a few minutes and to be a member of this community.
Thank you. We have Pam and then Pilar Lorenzana. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Pam Dorr, and I work at Abode Services. We provide homeless and really vulnerable populations services to stay housed. One of the things we really need to be able to build good, affordable housing is local match. And the more fees you pass, the more housing we can build for you. And in the future, what you do here tonight will make a big impact on what you have on the ground in terms of affordable housing in the future. And we appreciate being part of the working group and the work you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Pilar? And then Sarah McIntyre.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the City Council. Pilar Lorenzana, I'm here on behalf of Silicon Valley at Home, which is the voice of affordable housing for Silicon Valley. I want to start off by saying that SV at Home is really a solutions-focused policy and advocacy organization, and that's why we were thrilled to be part of this working group, because the city, through this process, really built a little bit of a model of what it takes to solve the housing crisis, which means all sectors pulling together. I'm not going to talk about the problem. We all know what the problem is. So I'm going to focus on the solutions that we all agreed on. But first, I want to start by thanking Vice Mayor Caserta. It was through his leadership that all of these different voices came together on a compromise. I'm going to stress the word compromise because that's what we all had to do. So SV at Home is in full support of the recommendations of the working group, and I want to flush out the 3 questions that we didn't have an answer to. I will stress what the SV at Home position is and what the compromise coalition position was. All along, we've taken the position that all cities need at least 15% inclusionary. We supported the 12.5 inclusionary requirement that was put forward on the for sale as a compromise position so that we could all figure out how to make this problem, start to solve this problem. As far as the impact fee, the coalition of 8 organizations within the working group was firm in saying that we wanted a $25 per square foot impact fee. As a compromise position, in addition to granting exemptions as well as a longer grace period to the development community, we also agreed to support a $20 impact fee. The range presented to you, the advocates are supporting $20. So I respectfully urge that we do not water down that recommendation. Last but not the least, we support the grace period, but we recommend the full fee at the 12-month mark. If you had a chance to read through the very lengthy minutes, the vote was actually not split. There was a majority vote for full fee at the 12-month level, but because the second group minus 1 vote, so they lost by 1 vote, voted for a longer rollout period. That's what's reflected in the minutes. Thank you for the opportunity to participate in the working group and to speak, and Vice Mayor Caserta and Council Member, thank you so much.
Thank you. Sarah, and then after Sarah, I have Jeffrey Buchanan. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Sarah McIntyre. I'm a project manager at Independent Housing and also a member of the working group. We are deeply grateful for the political will and support shown by the city by joining neighborhood jurisdictions and considering this fee and for convening the working group. And I'm here to generally urge you to adopt the working group's recommendations. I strongly support also a 15% inclusionary on-site requirement for both rental and for sale, which is in line with many neighboring jurisdictions and simpler to implement as opposed to 2 different percentages. Additionally, as Pilar said, along with other affordable housing advocates in the working group, I was initially in support of a $25 per square foot rental residential impact fee. So I would encourage you to, at the minimum, implement the higher end of the working group's recommendation, if not that $25 fee. I also encourage you to begin the full fee at the 12-month mark, since it will already be phased in slowly over time, which provides adequate notice to projects in the pipeline, especially since conversations regarding this fee have been happening at Planning Commission and Council now for 6 months, and the fee won't actually go into effect for some time as well. Lastly, I would encourage you to target the fees that are collected to families who are earning 60% of area median income or below. And this is because developers can significantly leverage these funds for external sources that only target households earning 60% AMI and below, and also because all of the on-site inclusionary housing is targeted to 80 to 120% AMI currently and in the proposed plan. So this would give an opportunity to provide housing to lower income individuals in the city. We really appreciate all of the work by the Vice Mayor and the working group, and that all the work that staff has put into this to ensure that the impact fees will be fair and impactful. And I urge you to support these efforts by adopting these working group recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeffrey Buchanan and then Matt Hernandez.
Yeah, on behalf of Working Partnerships and the Silicon Valley Rising campaign, I just want to say it was an honor to serve on the ad hoc committee, and we really want to thank the Vice Mayor for his strong leadership on this issue, and Councilmember Colstead in her absence, Councilmember Mahan for their strong participation in this issue. Just to frame the topic, I think we've talked a lot about numbers and some specifics about policy, but a couple striking issues. Here in our region, we've seen service workers and blue-collar workers lose almost 20% of their wages over the past 10 years from the rising cost of housing in terms of the money they're able to bring home. Just today, a new report from Beacon Economics said that low-wage work and the unaffordability of housing are actually to be, likely to be a leading factor in Silicon Valley seeing a drop in job growth. I think it's very obvious that raising wages and creating more affordable housing are perhaps the greatest challenges before our communities and our working families. And I think the issue here around trying to create a policy around residential and non-residential impact fees are particularly poignant. I think that we worked really hard on the committee to get consensus on items. I think some of the characterizations perhaps from staff around what was consensus or what wasn't consensus, you've already heard some conversation there, but I guess to state our positions, we support certainly going to the higher end of the numbers. 20 would be a good consensus. We had thought 25 initially on the per square foot impact fee for the rental, 15% on the inclusionary there. We are hoping to see the 12-month full phase-in period. As Pilar pointed out, we had a majority of votes on the committee, so we hope the council will take that into consideration. And lastly, really strongly encourage the council to look at this issue around an incentive for residential construction projects where developers agree voluntarily to pay an area standard wage. We had some back and forth. Our initial proposal to council that we filed in the letter on May 31st talked about an apprenticeship and a area standard wage component to that policy. We have since heard some concerns from the city attorney and others and submitted the idea of perhaps just moving forward on area standard wage as that incentive fee. So would encourage you, that's what's been adopted in some of the peninsula cities to look at that as we move into discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That was perfect timing for your ending. Matt Hernandez and then Ken Kratz. Welcome.
Good evening, Council. My name is Matthew Hernandez, and I'm a sheet metal worker. Sheet metal worker with Local 104, and I've been a resident of Santa Clara for 5 years now. I'm a proud father of a 5-year-old who begins kindergarten next month at Bracker Elementary. It is Santa Clara is a great place to live. It's got the small town feel in certain areas. I mean, obviously things are changing, a lot of building going around. But living here in Santa Clara, it's opened my eyes to really enjoy being a part of this community, and I want to raise my daughter here. And as all of you know, living in this area, it's very high cost, and having at least a middle class sustainable wage is necessary to get by and live comfortably. Right now, I'm currently in my 5th year of a 5-year state-approved apprenticeship program, and it has helped me to support and allow my family to live here. If a responsible developer voluntarily chooses to pay its construction workers an area standard wage, then more workers will be able to afford housing here in Santa Clara. I ask you to please support the proposal tonight because it allows residents like myself to live and work here in Santa Clara. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Matt. Ken, and then Hamid Taib.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not really against the proposal. I do have a better idea. I prefer the guaranteed rent method for subsidizing housing as proposed by Jane Jacobs in her book, Death and Life of Great American Cities, because it is building-based, includes existing building as well as projects. The funding would be provided by raising taxes, as one of the previous speakers mentioned, or the existing federal CDBG grants, Section 8 housing, and of course, new building fees. The guaranteed rent method, as Jane Jacobs proposes, would be create a city office of dwelling subsidies that would, number one, backstop financing for building construction in new and old buildings. Two, guarantee rent for those buildings in the program. The office specifies the minimum number of rooms in the dwelling units to assure a mix of unit sizes. In exchange, the building owner would build in a designated area that the city wants. B, select tenants. The building owner would have to select tenants from a designated area in the city or building determined by the office. The office would look at the income of the selected tenants and subsidize in the amount necessary. As the household income improves, its portion of the rent would go up, freeing money in the program for other building projects. The current proposal that you have in front of you, I hope you'll, if you have to rely on that, increase fees to match the highest fees in adjacent cities, increase the hotel and retail fees to the commercial fee that is in adjacent cities. And a couple questions. What type of housing is to be provided? I think the city should specify the number of rooms and variety of units so that the market does not dictate primarily one type of dwelling, such as studios or bedroom units, or one-bedroom units. Are residents admitted into these subsidized units allowed to stay in those units as part of that community if their income increases?
Thank you, Ken. Hammond, would like to come forward, and then Sarah McDermott after that. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
Honorable Mayor and City Council and staff. My name is Hamid Taib. I'm the Director of Real Estate Development for Habitat for Humanity. We are a volunteer-based affordable home developer and one of the 10th largest in the developers in the nation. We are honored to be part of the working group, and we appreciate the opportunity to provide feedback as part of the working group. We urge the council to adopt the working group's recommendation as they reflect the depth of discussion from a diverse range of selected, including nonprofit affordable housing developers as well as for-profit developers. Two caveats I'd like you to consider. We do like the consensus build on 12.5%. We do appreciate the leadership of Vice Mayor and Council Member Mayan to make the working group go forward with the very serious discussions that we had all along. We do want to consider, you'd consider maybe 15% in lieu of 12.5%, allowing part of that for low-income housing development, as incentive for a developer, maybe include a density bonus above the state mandated bonuses. So you could have 12.5%, but if they go 15, if they go higher, give them additional density bonus that they can help. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sarah McDermott, and then Robert Aguirre. Welcome.
Good evening, Sarah McDermott, representing Unite Here Local 19. First of all, I'd like to thank you for including our organization in the working group. We're very happy that the City of Santa Clara is considering this issue and included us in the process. As many of you know, we represent food service workers and hotel workers in the City of Santa Clara. These workers, both our members and people who are not members in these industries, are mostly renters, and most of them would fall into the 50 to 80% under AMI rate. So they are very much feeling the housing crisis. I know you've seen a lot of Intel workers come before you. There's one cafeteria worker who didn't come to the meetings because she had to move to Tracy, and she has to drive back to Tracy every night to take care of her children. So this is a common story we're seeing. This is someone who works in Santa Clara and should be able to live in Santa Clara and provide for her family here. So this is why we were, along with many other community partners, in support of higher recommendations, and we're often on the higher percentage of what you ended up with as the consensus items. So I just want to highlight that. We've continued to see the production of low-wage jobs and service jobs without the production of housing for those people, and we know that this is unsustainable and can't continue. So we do support the recommendations. If you're going to go against the recommendations, please go higher, not lower. And finally, we support the idea of creating an incentive for construction projects that pay area standards. It's supporting people for doing the right thing and paying their workers well. So we support that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Robert, and then Dennis Martin after that. And if he's not here, we'll just go down the line. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. Thank you for allowing me to speak here today. I have a couple of questions, and I know I'm not going to get an answer, but this is something for you to think about. When you typically plan a project, you typically involve the customers, the clients, the ones that are going to be using those facilities. So I'm wondering how many homeless people or how many people from ELI, VLI, or LI were brought into this process to find out what they think, what they feel about it. Personally, I am homeless, but I'm not a fool. And I see an opportunity here for this council to make a decision that will impact a number of people many years from now. And your small decision of deciding between 12.5% and 15% right now seems like a very little amount. And when developers develop, they make money no matter what. They will make money. You can raise it up to 20%, they're still gonna make money. And I understand that people are gonna be impacted by that, first-time buyers and so forth, but guess what? You're gonna find buyers. I don't care what happens, you're gonna find buyers. And this is held out by proof by the cost of housing and how it's gone through the ceiling. And other areas throughout the rest of the country don't experience what we're experiencing. We're at the tip of the spear here. So we also have a responsibility, an opportunity to be able to take care of as many people as we can. So I say, go for the maximum. 15% inclusionary, $25 in the housing impact fee, and 12 months on collecting the money so that you have money to be able to supplement Measure A funds, to supplement SB 3 funds, to be able to build affordable housing, which we are very much in need of. We have so many people, and people talk about the homeless crisis. It's not a crisis. This has been going on for a long time, and part of that is because we don't build enough housing. And we don't have enough space for people to be able to go and live, so people are forced to live alongside of a freeway or under a bridge or along a creek. Please make a difference.
Thank you. Dennis? And then Steve Edwards after that. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Dennis Martin, registered lobbyist, and speaking on behalf of BIA Bay Area. I want to thank you for investing in this ad hoc working group process. We've appreciated the opportunity to meet and debate many aspects of the affordable housing program before you. I can assure you many hours were devoted to arriving at the best recommendations possible to bring to you. So we hope that you are guided by those as best as possible. As we pointed out in our letter, the continued production of market rate housing is the key to the affordable housing program. It's what's going to make it work. It's also the key to getting more housing on the ground and available to all of our residents. And it's also, as we've been hearing more and more about, the key to the health of our economy overall. So the continued production of market rate housing has to be the first thought in your head about going about this program. We generally endorse the balanced approach of taxing both residential and non-residential development, but we do have one huge caveat. Don't kill the goose. Now, you have experienced how new development can be brought down by overburdening it with too much cost in affordable housing. We want you to take a measured approach, take the conservative approach, and as you work along through this program through the years, perhaps find other avenues to fund your program. We're all suffering from the wisdom of Jerry Brown and the California State Legislature in dissolving the redevelopment agencies. So we are recommending that you adopt a 10% inclusionary for sale product at moderate levels, lower percentage for lower levels of affordability, $17 a square foot on rental, and we're going to ask you to seek advice and analysis from your city attorney, because we believe that you're not allowed to charge or mandate an inclusionary percentage on rental housing. Thank you.
Thank you. So Steve Edwards and then Pat Sacedo. After that, I don't have any more cards, so it's just lining up. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, council members. I am Steve Edwards from Rethink Development and an owner of one of the proposed projects in Tasman East. I participated on the ad hoc affordable housing working group with Vice Mayor Caserta, council members Mahan and Kolstad. I was a pretty vocal participant if you had a chance to read the minutes, but I am pleased to say I thought the working group did a great job at offering various points of view and facts while listening to others in the group. There was some healthy discourse and a few unresolved disagreements, but I feel the group came up with an educated and balanced recommendation and built on good compromise. I support the recommendations made to council by the working group with a specific appeal to set the tight ranges that were left open to council at the lower end of the range. Those requirements and fees on top of other fees, including the large park fees, are beginning to make residential projects on the rental side less viable, and in some cases, keeping existing uses on those properties, particularly in Tasman East, a better, safer alternative. We all know we desperately need housing, so let's make sure not to put too much pressure on the building of that new housing. With that said, I would hope you choose to have a 10% affordable requirement for rental residential and the $17 per square foot for the rental residential as well. And that was a compromise that we came down to. The committee increased the percentage or dollar per square foot on office to kind of offset some of these lower residential fees. In addition, I also agree with the possibility of reducing impact fees to incentivize certain types of development using prevailing wage and possibly micro units or high-rise construction. Thank you.
Thank you. Pat? Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Pat Sacedo. I am a registered lobbyist for NAIOP in the city of Santa Clara. First, I want to thank the mayor, the council, the staff, and the working group for having this opportunity to work through this process on this important issue that the city of Santa Clara and the whole Bay Area region is facing, called housing affordability. NAIOP supports the non-residential linkage fee recommendations by the working group. We believe that the working group's recommendations are reasonable and in alignment with Santa Clara surrounding cities, and will help to maintain this community, Santa Clara community's ability to continue to attract strong job creation investment in the city of Santa Clara. And I also want to echo Steve's comments regarding the office and increasing that to 20% to offset some of the linkage fee for housing. Additionally, NAIOP recommends the following out of the considerations. Adoption of the 18-month implementation timeframe. A lot of time was taken talking about the time it takes to put a deal together, to actually get in the game, have property in place, and make a submittal. We think the 18-month timeframe is fair and reasonable. Affordability requirements and the ability to meet a range of options that were included in the considerations to meet those affordability requirements, including the inclusionary on-site, off-site, and et cetera. We also, for new residential, because NAIOP often is part of a component of mixed-use development, and when you have residential and office and other uses, you have to work together to create these developments. We believe the 10% inclusionary provision and the $17 a square foot, again, is fair and reasonable and provides fees for the city to build affordable housing. And as I think, as Mr. Martin said, shouldn't kill the goose that's actually being able to produce housing for the city of Santa Clara and produce affordability fees to create affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Please come forward.
I look at the list of people on this affordable housing working group, and I was wondering who was supporting and recommending and representing the people who needed the affordable housing, because everybody on here is, or the majority of the people are representing the developers. So I guess that explains why the numbers are so skewed towards the low side, particularly the residential, commercial, and I'm sorry, the commercial, the industrial, and the office. What's presented here is a joke when it comes to reasonable. I hope that the council is much brighter than what's been put on this piece of paper. Proposing $5 when the surrounding cities are looking at anywhere up to $20 is a pretty insulting figure, and I think the planning department should be ashamed of themselves for even proposing such ridiculous numbers as they are putting forward on these numbers. To say $10 or $20 when our surrounding neighborhoods are putting 20, 25, 25, 15. I wonder who they're working for. They must be getting big payoffs once again from the developers.
Debbie, let's please stay
this
to
is
the topic.
Pathetic what
Please,
they're doing.
Debbie.
I wonder who they're working for
Debbie,
again.
Just stay to the topic, please.
Then we're looking at this inclusionary requirement. There's one that's at 10, I'm sorry, there's two that's at 10, most of them are at 15%. I hope that Santa Clara can do their numbers and they do it at 15%, because the 12.5% doesn't pencil out either. They need to get new batteries in their calculator. I hope when they look at affordable housing, they go at a 60% AMI, because 80% to 125%. Santa Clara does not need more housing. They need affordable housing. We've got the thing over at Kaiser still isn't filled. And the implementation, please don't go on this silly schedule. Please do 60 days or 100 days. If you're going to delay the implementation, how about delay building them?
Thank you, Debbie.
And the money for this, let's do it at the permit, please. And no council exceptions, so they can't be bought off on that too. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I have a comment, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I just want to say that I'm so proud of the comments made here tonight. This group was a balanced group. The majority were not developers. And part of the reason everyone was so happy with the group, the last person wasn't there at all.
More members of the public, please come forward. Welcome.
Hey, Hussam Hagag here. I really appreciated what my brother Robert Aguirre said when he came up here, that, you know, who on that working group represented the people who would actually benefit from this, the low incomes. And so, you know, I also want to say, let's stop calling it as killing the golden goose. Trust me, the goose will be fine. It's laying golden $1 million eggs, and it's been doing it for quite a while.
Excuse me, hold on 1 second. If you could please let him speak. Thank you. Go ahead,
Can I get some more
Hassan.
time back? Thank you.
Yes, I'm sorry about
it's
that.
laying golden $1 million eggs, and it's been doing it for quite a while without having to pay any fees. And according to the latest article from the Merck published today, most of these homes are selling for $200,000 over asking. So I want to echo some of the comments that were made here tonight. Number one, I'm really opposed to the idea of taking these affordable units off-site. We don't want Santa Clara to have any projects. We want to embed people we are all human beings. We should all live next to each other. We need to integrate, all levels of affordability in these developments. We shouldn't be pushing them off-site. And so any proposal that allows for, in lieu fees to push them off-site or for the developer to build off-site should be taken off. These developments should have a mix of people from all income ranges living side by side. The second one is that Santa Clara should be bold and they should go for at least 15%. No talk of anything less than 15%. And it should specify 5% for low, 5% for moderate, and 5% for the affordable. We should be bold about these things, and we should be bold about the $25. A lot of the people that were coming up here today who were part of the working group were saying, we wanted $25, but for consensus sake, because the developers want it less, we'll be happy with 20. Let's do 25. Let's be bold. Let's work for the people who need it the most. The third thing is, under the exemptions, mixed use where you have commercial on the bottom and residential on the top is under the exemptions. It should not be. And then the last one is that if projects convert from rental to for purchase, it says in the document that there may be an option for them to not have to pay or to not have to designate affordable units when they convert to purchase. It should also include when they convert to purchase for purchase that it should also include affordable housing units in that purchase. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else like to speak? Please come forward. All right. Councilmember Kolstad.
Thanks, Mayor. I have to agree with what several members of the working group said. This was a diverse group of people. There was about 25 people on the working group. Everyone advocated for their constituency very well on both ends of the spectrum. The meetings were efficiently run. They were precise, and a lot of different points of view were brought forward. Our staff did an incredible job supporting this whole effort, and it might not surprise you that I didn't get everything I wanted on these numbers, but then I look at some of the people that came to the meetings, they didn't get what they wanted completely on these numbers. Some weren't a little higher than I wanted, some were a little lower than some of my friends wanted, but we came up with a compromise that is a good place to start. I was talking to Councilmember Davis before the meeting, and she was discussing some different ideas to change this presentation, this staff recommendation, and they were good ideas, and I think they should be explored going forward. That being said, we have a real good framework to start working from right here, and that's to the credit of all the people who were in the group and the staff. And I would hope that you all would adopt this staff recommendation. Like I say, I didn't agree with all of it. I thought maybe we should start at the low end of some of these issues, but we got a good compromise, and that over time you can amend this ordinance. You can direct staff to maybe prepare an annual report to council that would show how Santa Clara compares to all these other cities that are on the chart, how things have changed, how the cost of living adjustment has moved the numbers up, and see if that keeps us competitive and doing the right thing for the most people. I think this is a good starting point, and I hope you all will adopt it tonight. And then, like I say, maybe have an annual review to see what's changed from year to year. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Caserta.
Thank you. So I'd like to actually make a motion. I really think Committee Member Kolstad hit a lot of it on range. I think, politics is the art of compromise, and we would not be a country if we didn't do that at the Constitutional Convention. So I think a couple consensus items I'd like to make a motion on, and then building on the word compromise, discussing items with the range. So my first motion is, I see on consensus with the working group was the for sale residential consensus, so that would like to make a motion on that. Also the consensus on the non-residential, the two slides that are there on page 4 was consensus. So those were two, I think, low-hanging fruit items that I'd like to make a motion on, if there's a second, and then I want to make 2 more.
Could you please say specifically what the motion is?
I was just going to ask that.
Yeah.
Specifically.
So, yes, that'd be great. My first motion is on the for sale residential, slide 3, the first one, the consensus. Can we pull that up, if that's possible? The 12.5 inclusionary in lieu fees as follows. That
The
pulling up?
12.5%, Dominic, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, the one that was consensus, the first slide on our page 3. And the second consensus item was the non-residential, which is on page 4, slide A, or the top slide and the second slide.
And what was that one?
That's not the one I'm talking about.
Are you talking
It's
about the
one
$20
before-
impact fee?
The one before, please, who's ever controlling the PowerPoint. The for sale residential. There we go. So that is one of them I would want to recommend. And then if you skip the next slide and go to the next 2. My second motion, is seconded by Councilmember Kolstad, was to adopt that non-residential figures and the next slide as well. So that's the first of 3 motions I'd like to make. So, is there any discussions on that from the dais?
Councilmember Davis?
Yeah, I have, okay. I also want to add in there to come back and benchmark this in 1 year to see where this falls.
Well, that
because
was going to
there-
be one of my motions, that we're going to bring this up again in a year.
Would you amend that?
That's fine. The idea is
Okay.
whatever we come up with today, we will revisit in a year again.
Okay, and the other thing I wanted was the apprenticeship language. I don't know how. city
That was going to
attorney-
be I wanted to separate them to build
You wanted to
consensus.
separate that?
Yeah, but that was going to be one of my motions in a moment.
Okay, so,
If
okay.
you allow my indulgence, I will bring that up in a moment.
Okay, so if you're going to put that benchmark in there for 1 year, I'm good with that. And other than that, I think I'm good with your motion, except, but you're going to talk about the apprenticeship
Yeah, the other
language.
2 motions I
Okay.
was going to bring up was the language on the sheet that we got here about the incentive program, and then my other motion was going to be on the 2 range issues, but I want to keep it nice and clean right now, so.
Okay, so, city attorney, so I'm supporting this, but how do we take this individually?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
today we are not.
All we're doing today is giving direction to draft an ordinance.
That's right.
So I don't know what the 1 year,
Wanted to clarify.
I'm trying to understand what 1 year is about.
I'll just support the language for this ordinance. Is that what we're doing?
I'm understanding that you're making a motion to draft an ordinance to
I'm building
incorporate these
components in the
provisions.
ordinance
that I
Yeah,
thought
and we'll
was
come back with
obvious.
an ordinance, so,
With this language that's been added into
yes.
this?
So is it,
So this
okay,
isn't,
City Attorney, is it easier to take the body of this and give any comments on changes we want to see to whatever the staff recommendation is? Is that the easiest way to do this? Because otherwise, we're going to be dissecting this all night.
Right.
that's up to you in terms of what you think is the most clear. I'm going to have
I have
questions.
3 components, as I stated before.
I just was interjecting on the 1 year because I didn't understand it because we haven't even written the ordinance yet.
But I wanted that language in there. Because the recommendation says that the council review and comment on ad hoc affordable housing working groups' recommendations and proposed fees, provide feedback regarding the desired levels, and direct the city manager to prepare a draft. So basically, we're giving you that information, correct?
Right, we'll bring the draft ordinance back.
Okay.
Yeah.
I yield to you, Dominic.
So there's a motion and a second on those 3 components right now, and then I would like, after we vote on that,
So on, okay, I thought the motion was just for the for sale residential Is it now for sale residential, rental residential?
No, Madam Mayor, as stated, for sale residential. And the second component is the 2 consensus items on non-residential. And I thought it was obvious, but I will also put in the motion that a year from now, after the ordinance has been voted on, that we will reconvene the ad hoc committee and see how we're going and bring something back to the council.
What about the timing of the implementation? Where's that?
I think he's piecing this.
He's
Oh,
piec-
that's
yeah, he has
piecing it?
another,
If
right,
there's
right.
consensus on it, then we're going to have to talk about the ones with those ranges.
Okay. Councilmember Davis, your light's still on?
Oh, no, so long as we're adding in those components, I'm good.
Okay, any other comments on the motion? Okay, lights on the motion? And that passes unanimously.
My second motion is referring to the letter that we received from the working families. I think with consensus, the idea, again, the reason I'm supportive of this is, you know, it's an incentive program, it's a voluntary program, and we all see this, whether we're teachers in the classroom or whether we're getting work done in our house, having people drive from places like Tracy just isn't good economics for what's in Santa Clara. So my second motion that I think has consensus on this dais is the language on the page that directs staff to, quote, create an incentive for residential all the way down to the last 3 words, area standard wages. I don't know if City Attorney, you want me to read the whole thing?
I'm not sure what you're referring to.
I don't know what you're referring to.
The letter given by us today that creates an incentive for residential construction projects. to
Who's
pay an
it
area
from? We've got
standard
about
wage.
12 letters today. So
It's the
who's
one
it
that
from?
only talks about the incentive program for residential construction.
Who is it from?
It's from Mrs. Cohen.
Do we all have a copy of that?
Yeah, she sent it to all of us.
From the attorney?
Emailed to us, and I printed that out, yes. It was discussed
Which
by about
packet is it in?
15 people speaking.
Where is packet is it in?
Altschuler and Berzon, LLP.
I don't know if we can we project this language here? It was emailed to us.
Got a lot of emails today.
Yes, I understand.
Do you want to just give it?
Josue, do you have the letter?
It's this one. This one.
What packet is it in? What's the front of it?
And it's from MASPRA, from my
I'm
attorney.
the one that needs it, so can someone give it to me?
Josue, he needs it. Yeah.
Yes.
My understanding is that their lawyers have been in touch with you, by the way, City Attorney.
Someone left a voicemail for me, and that's it.
So what are we looking at now? Where's the language? What page? No, that's something else.
You want to give that?
Okay, now I see a letter. I see a letter dated July 10th, 2017.
Well, let me read the language. The motion is to create an incentive for residential construction projects to pay area standard wages by granting a 25% reduction in the affordable housing impact for projects that voluntarily enter into an agreement with the city to pay area standard wages. This is voluntary. It's incentive-based. We took out the concern that the city attorney had on the apprenticeship program to increase the state mandate from 18 to 20. This is voluntary. There's precedent in multiple cities in the county north of us, and we like being the first progressively, like working ordinances, et cetera. This is an opportunity to do that. About 15 people spoke on that. You brought it up, Mayor, in the beginning of this. I thought there's consensus on that, so that is my motion to support that.
I have a duty to advise the full council.
Yeah.
And I have not had a chance to review this. I have not had an ability to do this. I've been extremely busy with other city business since this was discussed or first mentioned to me. I don't know what the vice mayor is talking about in terms of my concern with apprenticeship. I never expressed any concern with apprenticeship. So all I'm saying is we will take the direction we understand the desire to put something like this in the ordinance, but I just wanted to let you know I have not had an opportunity to analyze this from a legal standpoint.
So maybe the motion can be to refer that concept.
Refer that concept
to
as a
you
desire.
For this
Yeah.
particular ordinance with
Sure.
our desire to see that embedded in the ordinance, and then you come back with a recommendation
Sure.
for us.
That's
Vice Mayor, is that okay?
That's definitely
All right.
tangible and digestible. That's my motion. Is there a second?
Second.
So there's a motion. We're done with the public
Well,
testimony.
you just
at
introduced
this
some new
point.
material that the public hasn't even seen. so do I
That,
get to make a
we're
comment
not
on
in,
it?
excuse me, can you have a seat, please? We're not introducing any new material. It's a concept that we're referring to the city attorney.
Okay.
So there's a motion and a second. Lights on the motion, and that passes unanimously.
Excellent, Madam Mayor. I really appreciate that. And the third issue was the issues of range. And the two issues of range that I saw was on our page 3, the second slide, rental residential. We have a 10 to 15% range and a 17 to 20% range. And as you say, almost every working member was proud of the compromise that we came up with. And I think to be consistent here, middle point of 10 to 15 is 12.5 and 17 to 20 is 18.5. I think you give a little and get a little. I'm being willing to listen to the group on that, but I think that's something that's fair. And then the second issue was on this issue of, if we go to page 6, the implementation issue. The issue was, do we do full fee at 12 months or do we do something different? And I think the compromise point there is to do 12 months and 2/3 of the total fee. I think, yeah, keep shing. Thank you for
No, please,
following.
from the audience, please stop, please.
So that I think is consistent with compromise. I think everyone in the group on these two rangy issues, I think, are giving little and getting a little. And I was so proud of our group, and I think the motion will reflect that. So that is my motion. I hope there's a second. If not, I'll be willing to listen to my colleagues.
I wanted to support the $20, Dominic, on that one, not the 17, 18. You're talking the $17, $20 range, and you were coming up with $18.50. I'm kind of more on the 20 and just leave it where it was from.
Well, it's a range at 17 to 20,
Okay,
Councilmember.
I would
so-
rather go with the 20.
I would rather go with 20 also.
Can you speak in the microphone?
Sorry.
Thanks.
I would prefer to go with 20 also.
Councilmember O'Neill?
Well, I think, don't we need a second before we can really speak to the motion?
Motion's dead, or is there a second?
'Cause
I don't hear a
have an
second.
issue with the motion, too.
Okay, so go ahead. There's no
Okay,
second.
so my thought, there have been a lot of compromises towards the middle. On some of these, I would rather go to the higher end, but the thing with the implementation, if we go to the 2/3 of total applicable fee, well, when the heck does the full fee go into effect? Ever?
I think it's 18 months.
Well, it's not explicit. It's
I think.
it's very open-ended, so I'm just worried about when we would get to the full fee.
Okay, I was.
So would you like to make a comment about it?
Well, I would suggest 100% at 12 months.
Okay.
Okay, I'm good with Teresa.
So.
But we don't, but
No,
see,
go ahead,
Dominic-
make a
we
motion.
didn't- Dominic's motion, I think, failed somebody
Yeah,
else.
but the third issue, we haven't resolved the 10 to 15% range.
So the 10 to 15%, is there a comment on that? I'd like to see the 15%. I'd like to see the 15%, $20 impact fee, and the full fee at 12 months, because it'll take us 4 to 6 months to get this going.
Can I make a motion?
Yes.
Okay, so I appreciate the spirit of compromise that the Vice Mayor has talked about, but I think that there was quite a bit of compromise, so I would like to propose that we have a 15% rental residential affordability rate, a $20 impact fee, and that we have 100% at 12 months. The only thing that I'm still, it kind of caught my eye too, but so that would be my motion for now.
Is there a second?
Are you saying full build out in 12 months?
That's what I'm suggesting.
Okay, what
Full
about the
fee at
6-month
12
grace?
months.
What about the 6-month grace period full in 12?
That's what I'm,
That's what you want? Okay, I'll second your motion.
Okay, so let me just make one other comment. The one part that I was going to say that did stick out at me when I read it too was I wasn't clear as to why, and I should have asked this earlier, but I forgot. And then someone reminded me, why is there a mixed use exemption for the vertical mixed use?
No, that, we were not there yet for the exemptions.
Okay, so that's my motion.
A second yours, Teresa.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second for 15% rental residential, $20 impact fee, full fee at 12 months. City Attorney, and then Councilmember Colston.
I don't have any question about the numbers, but I do have a question about the implementation. I don't understand what you're talking about, and I think I'm the one that's supposed to have to.
So the
Well, no one invited me to the meeting, so I don't know.
Pardon me?
No one invited me to any of these meetings, so I don't know.
So the effective date, it's on.
I mean, excuse me, but I really don't appreciate being criticized for not understanding something that I was not attended.
No,
and I was not given any information until just a few days ago. And I'm really feeling like I'm being criticized in public for not understanding something that I was not a part of.
We're sorry, I don't think any of us meant to do that at all. So that's not, no, this is all new information for you.
Yes,
I know you weren't
and
part
I
of
don't
that
understand.
committee.
I don't understand that slide on implementation and grace period. I just simply don't understand what people are talking about.
Okay, well, we can refer that back to you and give you
Okay.
time to be able to absorb it. That's why I said that this is going to take a little bit of time for us to get through and put into an actual
Okay,
document.
so just if the next step is to come back to
This is all referral to
right,
you.
with the draft ordinance.
The draft.
Maybe does staff understand what they're talking about? Okay, good, because I don't understand it.
And again, we're really sorry if we're trying to
And I
demand
wanna
answers
say,
from you at this
Madam
point.
Mayor, I want to say my frustration is not for Mr. Doyle. My frustration is that somehow this has been pending. We've had this discussion as a working group since February, and somehow, whether it's communication by departments, et cetera, we should not be having our city attorney feeling this way at this moment. And I'm not indicting him. It's just this process. So
I don't understand what you're saying. This is the first time many of us have seen it. The very first time we saw this was last Thursday. Many of you have been working with this for a long time. Others of us, this is the very first time, and this is the first time the public's really seen this. It's a complex issue. It's very complex. It's hard to understand and put all together, and much less come up with a legal document to do this.
What I'm
So
saying
we're
is
just
over
trying to
4
work
months,
through
the
it. So
city attorney's
frustration,
office
there's
should-
no room for frustration at this point. We're just trying to work through it the best we can. Councilmember Colstead?
Thanks, Mayor. This reminds me of the passion that some of the people felt when our little working group was trying to hammer out the right numbers to do the most good. And you're all reaching to do more good for more folks. I see that. But my recollection was that Caserta had a motion on the floor, and he was putting out some numbers that he thought made sense. And I want to encourage you to start from a moderate point. And then in a year, if you decide you can afford to do more, you want to do more, that the business community can do more, in a year, come back and look at it again and try to do more. But let's keep it moderate and reasonable for the start, and then move on.
I made a motion. It wasn't seconded, boss.
Yeah. There's a motion and a second on the floor for the, just for the numbers on the 15% designated affordable projects for the rental residential, $20 impact fee, and the implementation schedule to include
6 months grace, full and 12.
0 to 6 months, no fee, 6 to 12 months, a third of the fee, 12 months full fee. Motion second. Lights on the motion. And that passes with one no. Did you get that, City Clerk? Okay. Okay, so next item we have is Teresa, Councilmember O'Neill.
Well, I had a question, maybe Andrew could help. Why was the mixed-use vertical exempted?
Right. So first, I may not have explained it very well, but it's really just the commercial component of a mixed-use project that was intended to be exempted. I think in the course of the discussion, the group had, the idea was introduced about trying to incentivize particular types of development that we were otherwise trying to support. And so that's where the idea originated. If you look at the commercial project, the commercial fee that you just adopted for retail, there was that 5,000 square feet, no fee. This would be comparable to that, except it takes the number up to 20,000. And it's just, I think it's just a recognition that, there's a lot of benefit from having retail in a mixed-use development, and that there should be some allowance for smaller mixed-use projects that up to 20,000 square feet of retail wouldn't be subject to a fee.
Okay.
And that's the rationale.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I get that. I see that.
Okay, so,
Okay with that piece.
anyone have a motion on
The
the
motion is to
non-res-
accept the exemptions as is.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to accept the exemptions. Teresa, your light's on?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Lights on the motion, and that passes unanimously. Next is the,
That was it, wasn't it?
no,
Oh, what did we miss?
did we do the commercial?
Yeah.
We did that as part of the
Yeah.
first one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Dominic did that one.
You did that.
I thought that was part of.
Non-residential
industrial.
commercial impact?
Yeah.
Do we have anything else? Anyone? Andrew?
There was something we called the other considerations, just to be
Okay.
thorough.
Let's go to that page.
Fees due prior to occupancy, fees which do cost escalation, credit for assistant enforcement. I'm good with that. Okay, motion to accept the other
Yeah, I've
considerations.
got to get to that page.
It's attachment 3.
Slide 12.
Second that. Slide number 12, correct?
Okay. So a motion and a second on other considerations.
So city attorney, you'll have to work out the language for when these in lieu fees would be due prior to occupancy, and I know that's kind of an issue.
I mean, I can.
For your final and all that.
That I can I understand. I can write the ordinance that way. I was just simply pointing out the difficulties with that.
Right.
But we'll also have some drafting issues with this concept of site control.
Right.
I mean, if somebody owned a property since the beginning of time, they've had site control, but then when they sold it to somebody who then applies for a permit, and then it's just going to be a complicated thing to write out.
Right, at the point of site control. Right.
Well, maybe some of that could just come back as then as kind of, you can present some of your research and we can.
Well,
mull
if
over
it
a little
comes
bit
back as a pass to print, I mean, I'll go through all these things with staff to the extent I understand, what it is you want to do. I'll give you the best shot at it. I have written several ordinances like this where you have a pipeline issue, whether it be, some new green building ordinance or something like that. I understand the concept and the triggers that might be involved with when people who are building want to know what the new regime is going to be. So I'm familiar with the concept. I'm just not familiar with some of the concepts here. I've never dealt with a situation where we had something like site control as opposed to having submitted a permit application by a certain date. That's typically the way you start a pipeline. And this is something new for me, and I'll do my best. And if it doesn't work, then you can decide to do something else.
Okay, that's all we can ask.
That's
Thank
fair.
you.
Okay.
All right, so there's a motion on the second for other considerations. Lights on the motion, and that passes unanimously. And I think, is that it for all the? Andrew? Very good. I want to thank the committee, Vice Mayor Caserta, Councilmember Kolstad, Councilmember Mahan, and everyone else that was involved in this. It's a heck of a lot of work, and I think you came back with some really good recommendations, and I think it's going to be something that's really going to be beneficial for us, because we're actually, I know many of us up here have been asking a lot of developers for voluntary affordable housing development on their projects, and it'll be nice to know that we actually have a formula in place to actually require it in our Nexus study and actually have a fee, and so we won't have to continue to ask for the voluntary affordable housing component. So thank you all very much for all your hard work on this very complex issue, and thanks staff as well. Thank you very much. All right, so moving on.
Unfinished business, right?
I lost my agenda.
16, unfinished business.
Okay. Can I find one? All right.
There it is. It's your green paper.
I have a lot of green papers here. Okay, next. Okay, the next item we have is unfinished business, and we have the bicycle lane improvements on Prune Ridge Avenue at Lawrence Expressway, approval of the conceptual design for implementation of the improvements, and appropriations of $460,000 for the new capital improvement project, and authorization to make contact with the property owner regarding the right-of-way acquisition. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. At the April 4th meeting, resident Mr. Donahue, he made a presentation to you about improvements that can be made at the intersection of Lawrence Expressway and Prune Ridge, and primarily the eastbound movement from northbound Lawrence Expressway and how the lanes merge together, how the bicycle lane could be extended. So staff had committed to coming back to you, and we have our traffic engineer, Dennis Yang here, who, by the way, changed his plans to be here. He had an emergency earlier, but thank you, Dennis, for being here.
You're back. Thank you.
He's the most familiar with the whole subject on Prune Ridge and everything. So,
I thought we were going to hear from Alan tonight.
Otherwise, yeah, Alan was going to be put into the fire today.
Plan B.
Yes. So we're going to present to you a conceptual plan. It has a cost element with it, and whatever other impacts that creates. We also looked at the west side of the intersection. There are some minor improvements that can be implemented with this project on the west side as well. And another resident, Mr. Kratz, has also submitted a proposal for the west side recently. So we'll present to you, and if you feel the west side needs to be looked even further, we can come back on that component of it. But at least today we should at least conclude on the proposal by Mr. Donahue. So with that, I would like to invite Dennis Eng to walk us through the proposal.
Thank you. And again, this is just on the east side of Prune Ridge.
Primarily on the east side, yes.
On the east side. Thank you. Welcome, Dennis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, council members. So in front of you, what you have is on this slide, a aerial photo of the existing conditions on Prune Ridge Avenue. This depicts the east side of the intersection. West side is a mirror image of this, with two left turn lanes on Prune Ridge, and then 2 through lanes in each direction. The Prune Ridge Bike Lane project was completed in 2010. There are no enhanced bicycle features on here at this time because the interim approval from MUTCD, the Federal Highway Association, wasn't given to California until sometime in 2011. What staff looked at was, based on Mr. Donahue's request, how to enhance the facilities at this intersection and then also to continue the bike lane. On this slide here, we have what we're showing is that green bicycle lanes on the approach to the intersection from the west side, and then also installation of sharrows in the curb lane on Prune Ridge, and then continuation across the street. On the east side, we determined that a widening would need to be done, as Mr. Donahue says, it would need to be approximately 688 square feet of right-of-way acquired, which is mainly landscaping and landscape berms that would need to be moved, and along with 2 storm drain catch basins relocated, some SVP streetlights relocated, and then some trees removed. This would provide enough space to continue the 2 bicycle lanes across Lawrence Expressway and install a new left turn pocket for the eastbound left turn on Prune Ridge to northbound Harvard. And then you'll also notice that there's green bicycle lanes on there, and then green bicycle lanes on the east side. What staff is recommending that council approve the conceptual design and direct staff to implement the improvements, approve appropriations in the amount of $460,000 in the capital improvement project, bicycle lane improvements on Prune Ridge Avenue at Lawrence Expressway from the Streets and Highway Fund, and authorize the city manager to negotiate and acquire the necessary right-of-way for the proposed project. With that, if there are any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Councilmember Davis.
Hi, Dennis.
Hello.
One of our favorite projects. Okay, so whose land is this that we have to, I know that the site issue with those trees is very hazardous when those people come off on that road there.
Mm-hmm.
So who owns that land there? Are they gonna?
It's a single property owner that we've reached out to already.
Okay.
And he's agreeable to acquisition of right-of-way for the city. We haven't started the appraisal yet, so that's the next step once council approves the concept.
Okay, and okay, so the bicycle lane will go. Okay, I'm trying to figure this out. I think the impact is mostly coming from the Apple thing, where people were kind of concerned how they come off of Lawrence Expressway and go across that area. Because I know when I come in there, it's just hazardous for the people that live on Harvard. So when you did this, what did the people on Harvard say for them to get in and out of this? I mean, to me, this looks good, but I'm not a traffic engineer.
Well, one of their first concerns were the intersection being congested and clogged up by the queuing traffic. So we've installed the keep clears to help improve left turn access.
Where are you going to put that on Harvard? Where can you?
No, the left turns are actually there right now.
Okay.
The keep left, sorry.
Keep clears are there now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And we have $460,000 in capital to do this?
So maybe I can address that.
Okay.
Mayor, first thing is, these improvements, just to repeat what Mr. Eng has said, we had considered all these things when we implemented the project first time. However, because of the right-of-way take, because of the impacts to the trees, et cetera, at that time it was not included. So we want to make sure council fully understands the impact, but these improvements will be left turn pocket for Helford, and then a designated bike lane, the green bike lane near the sidewalk, by acquiring the additional right-of-way that's shown in like pink color here. So the 460, if you approve the concept of the design, the staff is recommending that we need 460,000 appropriated towards this project, which includes the right-of-way cost. That's built into it, and as Mr. Eng pointed out, we haven't appraised the property yet.
And the land acquisition
and the land, we'll start that process, but we believe within this estimate we can accomplish that.
Okay, I think you answered my questions, but I would like to hear from Bruce.
Thank you. Councilmember Watanabe.
Thank you. Just to tag on to Councilmember Davis's question about the right-of-way and building the cost of the right-of-way into the 460,000, based on how much land is going up these days, especially in that part of town. I mean, is there a cushion there, or do you have a guesstimate of what it's going to?
Yeah, we've used our best guess at this point for budgeting purposes, but like we said, we haven't started the appraisal process. But we know generally ballpark what the land value is in that area. This does not impact the property directly. This is outside of the fence.
Right.
But as Mr. Eng pointed out, this is landscape, berm, et cetera. So that's what we will be acquiring.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, I have some cards from the public. The first would be Mr. Bruce Donahue, and then Betsy Migas after that. I know you brought this to our attention, Mr. Donahue.
Yes.
Thank you.
The late night meeting, I was happy to do that because I think this is a safety issue and has been overlooked for a couple of years. And personal experience, and Ms. O'Neill and other people have all said that there's something that should be studied, and you were kind enough to study it and look into it. I'm an opinionated person when it comes to safety, and I might throw a few ideas out that, I would hope would just be reviewed. And then I'm also very conservative in the sense that I fully understand that details could be changed in the year or so before, if you approve the project, before this is actually designed. And so my comments on the expert proposal that is here is that in my proposal, I wanted to include a 2-foot buffer on the south side, because I felt that the traffic was merging and the bikes were merging, and this additional 2 feet is nominal in terms of the right-of-way width. And so the staff said that it can't be done, if you could bring the exhibit back up, it can't be done because of a problem with alignment on the east side of Harvard. Well, I think you all should move the sidewalk on the east side of Harvard 2 to 3 feet south, so that this buffer can be added, the alignment problem be solved, a wider merging intersection, et cetera, be provided. And then this curb and gutter at Harvard would all be within the existing right-of-way. So it's just a matter of moving it a little bit and adding a little more work, a nominal amount. The second thing is, this goes to my conservative definition of the project. I would implore the traffic engineer to use his expertise to provide dimensional lanes and curb and gutter to curb and gutter dimensions on the exhibit, so that a year from now, people have a firm understanding of what the minimums are if you approve the project. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Betsy? After Betsy, we have Ken Kratz. Welcome, Betsy.
So mostly I wanted to say thank you for considering this project. We have a number of intersections in this city which are similar to this one, where generally to open up turn lanes and things, the bicycle lane disappears. And there's a lot going on here. There's a merge lane, there's turning traffic. Intersections are some of the most dangerous places to ride a bicycle, and to have the bicycle lane kind of just vanish is pretty frustrating, and it's scary. It is definitely a safety issue. So thank you very much for revisiting this intersection and for considering this project.
Thank you. Ken, and then Diane Harrison.
Yeah. The fellow with the electronics, I don't know if you have my drawing that's in their packet. I don't know if you can. Okay.
Unless you have
a picture of it. Yeah.
Ahead of time, you have to get it.
Did that make your packet? I had it. Yeah, that's it. That's probably it. As long as you know. I hope you'll consider that. But I'll talk about the east side primarily.
Okay.
I want to thank the engineering department for developing a plan to fix this problem. It is a needed improvement for motorists, the left turn lane on Prune Ridge at Harvard, and for cyclists to eliminate the pinch point. A less costly alternative is to restripe the Prune Ridge to eliminate one through lane at three of the corners, northeast, northwest, southwest. I would like the pinch point on the west side of the expressway fixed too. I'm worried by the language in the proposal that I infer may only include striping for the left turn lane at Harvard, rather than including the widening of the roadway for cyclists. I'm opposed to that change, if that indeed will happen, as it will jeopardize the safety of cyclists. Why is the money for the project that is proposed to come from the Sidewalk Maintenance Fund? This project only benefits motorists and cyclists and not pedestrians. The sidewalk in this location is in good condition. what percent of the fund is taken by this proposed improvement? I suggest, due to the ongoing need to fix our sidewalks, that if this type of funding is used for this type of project, that the city go ahead and tax the residents, tax resident motorists per motor vehicle, and tax businesses and commercial enterprises per employee motor vehicle in an escalating rate. This would encourage employers and residents to use alternative forms of transport and would fund maintenance and improvements that benefit not only motorists, but also cyclists and pedestrians, as well as multimodal commuters, such as those walking to the VTA 328 commuter bus stop that is located at Lawrence and Prune Ridge. These alternative forms of transport benefit the city as a whole and is consistent with the goals of the city's general plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Diane Harrison, please come forward. Good evening.
Hi, I'm Diane Harrison, and longtime activist. Anyway,
Diane, you want to put the microphone
sorry.
so we can hear you?
Sorry,
Thank you.
I'm Diane Harrison. I very much appreciate the designs that were created by Mr. Donahue and Mr. Kratz and Dennis. But I do think that the traffic on Prune Ridge is not primarily caused by Santa Clara residents who live on Prune Ridge and the neighboring streets, but by the employment centers that are all to the east in Cupertino. And so it doesn't really seem fair that the Santa Clara residents are paying for something that is not caused by and is mostly benefiting people who are working in a neighboring city. The employment centers and possibly the city of Cupertino should be bearing the brunt of this cost. We should not be sacrificing our city sidewalks for this. Although it's a very good plan, I think maybe we should try some lower cost options first. For example, to remove the second approaching lanes on both eastbound and westbound Prune Ridge, which would reduce the actual accidents because you wouldn't have high-speed traffic crossing Prune Ridge and then going from 2 lanes and then back down to 1 lane. You just have the 2 lanes on the receiving end for the turning traffic. And I also think that the employers should encourage employee shuttles from and to BART, light rail, and Caltrain, and park and ride lots, and possibly encouraging also more VTA buses on both Prune Ridge and Tantagh, and maybe flexible hours for the employees as well. And I think this affordable housing that we were just discussing for 2 hours would probably help as well. I think I'm about out of time. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for those suggestions. Very good. I don't have any other cards, so please come forward if you'd like to speak.
First, I want to thank Mr. Donahue for taking this on because it was unfortunate this wasn't done when they did the road diet because that's what created this whole pinch point to begin with. My only concern is I hope we're not going to have people rear-ending the cars that are now going to be waiting to turn left onto Harvard because that becomes a real problem too. So we may be avoiding one problem and creating a new one. So have they really thought about it so that there's only 1 lane of traffic coming across Lawrence Expressway? Because the problem is you've got 2 lanes coming into 1 immediately, and if you stop the 2 coming across, you wouldn't have to come from 2 to 1. So that might be the way to stop the problem before it arrives there. And I'm really surprised at how much landscaping you took out of the apartment complex because that's not originally what he planned or what he had proposed. So there's a lot more landscaping that we're buying from that apartment complex. But and also the proposal of taking some more real estate away from the real estate office on the other side might be the only way to get this so it's more open because you're going to have more wrecks here now with that left-hand turn lane there. So let's make sure we're really solving the whole problem because that intersection is a mess and there's been a lot of accidents there already on a regular basis, there's a lot of accidents there. I don't know how many get reported, but there are a lot of accidents. There's always glass and pieces of tail light at that intersection right there. So we're getting closer, and I hope Dennis and Alan, as we do more projects like that, it's really looked at a lot better than it was done in the past, because these things weren't looked at holistically as they should have been. So hopefully now with the new director, it will be done better than it's been done before, so we don't have these post-project problems. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Davis?
I'll go with public comment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'd like a motion to approve. Gotta turn this on. I'd like to approve the staff recommendation for the conceptual design and direct the staff to implement the improvements, and also the funding for the acquisition, the land acquisition on that one, and for the city manager to negotiate the right-of-way of the project.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion second. Councilmember O'Neill?
Yes, thank you. So this is probably just whistling in the wind, but as the city manager's referenced, there is supposedly some Apple money that was supposed to be like post-mitigation. I don't know if we could even claim it for something like this, but, you know, obviously a lot of the traffic that goes down Prune Ridge is going down, you know, we'll be going to enter the garages that will be accessible from Prune Ridge. I don't know if there's any chance that we could get a piece of that for something like this.
Well, so City of Cupertino has collected about $250,000 for improvements along Prune Ridge corridor, but that's mostly for traffic calming. And, you know, they've done the pre-occupancy studies of Apple. Now they're going to do post as Apple campus gets occupied. And so that's really not meant for this one project. That's meant for the whole corridor and smaller improvements at various intersections. Now, we could make a claim to that, but then obviously when other improvements are needed along the corridor after the campus is occupied, then we'll have to find some other money for that purpose. So there is $250,000 that Cupertino has collected from Apple for this corridor.
All right. So my second thought, just to explain, having commuted on bike through that intersection for many, many years, when the road diet went through, the reason why, and I know it's kind of crazy, on both sides, because there's 2 lanes, crosses, and then it goes down to 1, was, I believe it was, so that they could so that as many cars as possible could get through on a signal cycle. And so I think that, you know, so if we were to take away those 2 lanes going through the intersection, even though it is kind of a mad dance, then we would have, I think there would be much more backup, because, you know, 1/2 of the cars could get through the intersection on each cycle. So I'm not sure that would work. So, I mean, I'm supportive of the motion, but perhaps, you know, Dennis and his team can, you know, this was a very preliminary, you know, drawing, that maybe they can really look at it and, you know, see if there's some other things that could be done, or, I don't know, do we have a grant writer now in Public Works?
I'm sorry, do we have?
Weren't we going to get a grant writer in Public Works? Did that happen?
Well, Dennis and his team go after all the grants that are
I know,
available.
I thought we were going to
yeah.
get somebody dedicated to help them, but maybe not.
We have a new position, Principal Transportation Planner,
Right,
that has
okay,
started.
so maybe I
yeah.
misunderstood. I thought, because I was going to say, I don't know if there was any grants we could, for
Yeah,
something like
at
this.
the VTA level, we've explored and we've maximized the grants for us, but we'll continue to explore.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so there's a motion and a second. Lights on the motion? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. If we can get that started, thank you. And thank you, Bruce. Appreciate your persistence on this. All right. Yeah, not yet. Items set for hearing. First is the pass to print an ordinance amending the city code related to accessory dwelling units. So we'll open the hearing.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Brief presentation by Andrew Crabtree, Director of Community Development.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. So the item in front of you is a proposed amendment of the city's municipal code, the zoning code portion of it, to address accessory units, secondary units. What these are, when you have a single-family residence, a second unit that can be constructed generally in the backyard or attached to the primary unit. And the rationale for this change is that the state recently adopted legislation that gave direction to local cities throughout the state to make changes, if necessary, to conform to certain requirements that the state identified. So our objectives in this are to continue to advance our general plan goals that recognize that accessory units can play an important part of our housing supply, to conform with state regulations, and as we went through the process also to build on our existing regulatory structure, how we address the secondary units already and maintaining that, what's familiar to the community. State requirements were adopted in September of last year and effective in January of this year. So we're really doing this to catch up with what the state has said we must do, and so that we can continue to have our own regulations as well as what the state requires that we do. The state's ordinance addresses a minimum lot size, parking requirements, building setbacks, maximum unit size, and building massing design for these projects. Well, the last is something that we've added through our own process with the Planning Commission and the community as we go, as you'll see. So I'll summarize each one. The minimum lot size, very simply, state says that communities have to allow accessory units on lots as small as 6,000 square feet. Our ordinance currently says 7,000, so the proposal would change that to 6,000 square feet to conform. We have embedded in that at that lot size there's a maximum 2 bedrooms. Going through the process with the community and the Planning Commission, our ordinance would also allow for even smaller than 6,000 square foot for single-story accessory units and apply lot coverage and floor area ratio requirements that would address that and limit those to 1-bedroom accessory units. So we'll look at some examples. Another issue raised by the state was that local jurisdictions could not require additional parking for accessory units. It's been standard practice for ours and many communities to do so. So the state said in any case where the accessory unit would be within a certain distance of transit or other types of facilities that you could not require. When we looked at the map of Santa Clara, almost the entirety of the city met one of these state criteria. Our proposal simply was to just not require parking for accessory units, rather than to try to carve out one small part of Santa Clara or a few small parts that wouldn't meet the state criteria. There's also some other, so that addresses that. The second part of it is that the state says that in instances where parking is removed to build an accessory unit, you have to allow it to be replaced in any configuration. So that's addressed in the proposed ordinance. For setbacks, the proposal would reduce the required setbacks for rear yard and side yard to 5 feet and 3 foot respectively. We also have in our ordinance a maximum rear yard coverage of 40%. And so that's the within sort of 20 feet of the backyard property line, the accessory unit cannot cover any more than 40%. So that's a development standard that we would apply. Then the issue of maximum unit size is mentioned. The state said you have to allow units up to 1,200 square feet, but there's also, if it's attached, it's tied to the primary residence where it cannot be greater than 50% of the primary residence size, excluding garage. So that's in the ordinance. And then for detached, the 1,200 square feet. However, you can have other kinds of development standards like setbacks and lot coverage ratios that would apply and limit that further. So in our case, we looked at some examples. The first one is a 5,000 square foot lot with a existing house that's 1,600 square feet, and given our 40% maximum lot coverage standard, you could not actually build a secondary unit on this lot, even if the other provisions would in theory allow it. The 40% maximum lot coverage prevents a second unit on this lot. Looking at another example, also a small lot, 5,000 square foot, and with a small house, 1,100 square foot on the site. In this case, you could build a maximum of about 500 square foot dwelling unit. So while there's that 1,200 square foot limitation out there, again, because of the maximum lot coverage, you could only have a 500 square foot unit as the largest. In this case, you see, too, there's that blue dotted line that represents what we call the rear yard. We have a provision that you can't occupy more than 40% of the rear yard. So 400 square feet can be in that. The other 100 would have to be outside of that area. So you see a representation of what that might look like that would conform to our standards. A third example, slightly larger lot, 6,000 square feet with an existing 1,600 square foot house footprint, single story, with an attached garage. And again, with the 40% lot coverage, you are in this instance limited to a 400 square foot accessory unit. Because of the larger, wider lot, all of it could be within the 20-yard rear setback. And then one final example, a little more complicated, with a detached garage, a larger lot, 7,000 square foot, 1,800 square foot house. Again, looking at it based on the 40% lot coverage, you're really limited to about 600 square foot unit, of which only 260 square feet could be in the 20-foot rear yard, as you already have the detached garage occupying some of that space. So I think that the takeaway from this is perhaps that it's a little bit complicated with all these different development standards working together, but that we should recognize, looking at some fairly realistic examples, that even as we meet the requirements of the state to have allow units up to 1,200 square feet and so forth, in most instances it won't be possible for someone to achieve that full envelope. The ordinance also addresses some building massing design issues, sort of limiting if the accessory unit becomes second floor of the project, that there's a minimum lot size of 6,000 square feet in those cases, and there's some setback requirements for that. A minimum of 3 foot or 5 foot front, side, and so forth. So those are in here. We can discuss it further if you have questions about that. And as mentioned earlier, one of our goals is general plan consistency, where our general plan really calls for us to produce a certain number of accessory units each year. We have not been producing units at that rate, 25 per year. We've been under at a lower rate, as you can see. So having a little bit more leniency in the regulations as proposed would help us to be more consistent with our own general plan, as well as the state ordinances. And so with that, we're bringing forward to you the Planning Commission's recommendation. As part of their discussion, they did recommend approval. They did add in the no minimum lot size for single-story accessory units, but to maintain a 6,000 square foot lot minimum size for two-story accessory units, and then maximum floor area ratio standard that they added as well, of 0.40, that would further limit the total mass of what could be developed on the property. And so recommending approval as drafted and recommended by Planning Commission, and available to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the council? Councilmember O'Neill.
Thank you. So I did talk with, I've had some conversations with some residents about the ordinance, and One of the things in the staff report that was interesting was all the detail on the range of the size of lots in Santa Clara. You know, we've got a number of lots that are quite large, and I know I can think of a neighborhood where there's very deep lots and there's quite small houses. So one of the points that was raised to me by a resident was that with the 12 by a lot, you know, the Senator Wachowski's law said up to 1,200 square feet, which that may have been to accommodate, you know, guest homes on estates in Woodside or something like that. But, you know, say for like neighborhoods that we have that have 1,000 square foot homes, but those 1,000 square foot homes may be on a 8,000 square foot lot, which I can think of neighborhoods that I know that exists. Would we end up then with a bigger house behind it, an accessory unit that's bigger than the front house, which, you know, are we then really going almost more with a 1,200 square foot accessory unit? You know, that's probably for a lot of people, that's more like a three bedroom house. So are we getting beyond creating accessory units and creating houses? I realize that this is kind of a corner case, but so I'm kind of questioning a little bit about. And I understand your all the examples that you gave, but in that instance where you have pretty large lots with small houses, are we creating a situation that we maybe didn't foresee?
So with a 8,000 square foot lot, for example, in the 40% lot coverage, we have 3,200 square feet of ground floor area, and if 1,200 of that were applied to the accessory unit at the maximum, there would still be about 2,000 square foot per footprint now available for the first floor of the primary residence. And it could be 2 stories, so it could be even larger than 2,000. So the ordinance wouldn't force the accessory unit to be larger than the main house. You know, the main house could be up to 2,000 square feet on the ground floor and even bigger if it had a second story. But if you did have a small house on the front, it's theoretically possible that you would end up with a larger accessory unit than the primary residence if you had the instance where you had, you know, 1,000 square foot house on an 8,000 square foot lot. And you know, that's something you can, if that's that particular instance is of real concern, we can look at that further. But you know, I would suggest that, you know, 1,200 square feet is still a fairly small residence, and since the homeowner would still have the ability to expand the front house further, my judgment, it wouldn't really be that much of a concern that we were somehow creating a larger secondary unit than the primary residence. And
with the use of, because this is like the first time I think that we have guidelines where we look at the FARs. Can you talk a little bit more about why you decided to include the use of FARs in this ordinance?
Floor area ratio.
Yeah, so floor area ratio, just, for listening public, FAR.
In regulation, there's one.
You know, is the ratio of square footage of development to lot size. So it's basically a measure of how much of the site is developed in some mass. And you know, this was something that came out of the Planning Commission process. They had, I think, 3 meetings where they discussed this, and they, I think they were looking for ways to not just address the amount of the lot that's covered, setbacks, and so forth, but kind of add almost, you know, belt and suspenders, but another limitation just to make sure that the bulk of development over on the site didn't become excessive. And that's sort of the typical tool that you would use if that's your objective, right, is to limit the overall mass of building on the site. So, you know, the question is, you know, is it necessary, and that if you have limits on just lot coverage overall and height limits, is it really going to become necessary to have that? But in the Planning Commission's judgment, it would add value in that you could further kind of sort of regulate what would be possible with that additional restriction.
Okay, and the last thing that, because I think probably the majority of houses in Santa Clara are probably late 50s on tract homes where the garages were attached and they're in the front of the house. And I've already heard people talking about converting their garages into an accessory unit. So did the Planning Commission give much thought? I mean, I know there's some language in there about maintaining kind of, some of how it would look, but like the thought of, I think originally people were probably thinking, an accessory unit, either it's a garage that's in the back of the property that's being converted, or an accessory unit that's being added onto the garage. Was there much thought about how this might look to have garages that are being turned into accessory units in the front of houses?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's certain building code requirements that would need to be met in terms of bedrooms having windows and adding a front door and so forth. So I think the expectation is that the garage would look more like a part of the residence, but with a separate entry. There needs to be, in that case, if you're displacing existing parking spaces, if one or two, if it's an older house that only had a one-car garage, for example, you still need to provide 2 parking spaces on the site. So there would need to be an adequate setback or space somewhere for those 2 spaces, but they don't necessarily need to be covered. I know those things were discussed. Beyond that, in terms of like actual design aesthetics, I'm not aware of any discussion. Yeah, and one of the things I emphasize here too is that, and we currently have a ministerial process for accessory units, and we must, per the state law, continue to have that. So any kind of design standards have to really be like hardwired into the code, so that it's not a discretionary review process, right? Like the architectural committee conducts, but it really has to be something very simple, like it does this, it's written down, you must do that, you must meet this setback, et cetera.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's all I have for now.
I have a question, and I apologize if I was out of the room when you answered it, but what if an accessory unit is added to like a detached garage in the back of a lot, and then it's like a second story, but then there's the height limitation? So how would that work? And again, apologize if you've already answered that.
No, I didn't speak to that. So could you raise I mean, there's still a limit on the height of a detached structure. Is that? Yeah, 14 feet is what we have, and so that's still in our code as a development standard. So
what if it's on top of a garage? Is that 14 from the top of the garage?
No, that's the structure. So we're still limiting the height of that detached garage. If it's converted to an accessory unit, it can't be any taller than 14 feet.
If it's converted, but what if the accessory unit is to be built on top of the garage? So that you keep the garage.
You can't do that.
No, we can't do that.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. You can build it on top of the house, but not on top of the
Not the garage. Is there a reason
if it's in
for
the
that?
back.
Is there a reason?
I mean, we have traditionally had a limit on the height of accessory structures in the backyard, and we've preserved that. There's nothing in the state law that said we had to take that away.
Okay.
And so we're continuing to have that height limit.
Do we have many, and I know in the old quad there is the detached garages.
Right.
In the rear yard, predominantly old quad area.
Right. I mean, so this ordinance would facilitate the conversion of those detached garages into accessory units, and that now the parking that's lost could be made up, say, by having the driveway in front of that garage count as your parking spaces. But
Okay. All right. Thank you for that clarification. Is there any other questions from the council? Seeing none, thank you very much, Andrew. I do have some cards, so we'll go through those. Ian Champney, and then Josh Barus. Sorry, I can't read the writing. Josh. Welcome.
Hi, thanks. I sent over some correspondence. I'm not sure if you got a chance to look at it. But I do want to applaud the process and the planning staff, planning commission, and members of the public who participated in this. And there have been many, many hours of work that have been put into this. I think that the goal here is to help meet the housing demand and at the same time increase the affordable housing options. The general plan housing element, which Andrew had pointed out, has an objective of 25 accessory dwelling units, and it's not being met. I think it's just 16 ADUs that were approved from 2013 to 2015. So even if this does, this ordinance as written does get passed, it's going to be a gradual process. I don't think it's going to be something like where everyone's going to rush out and build these. But it's very necessary. And the main thing that I wanted to point out is that I think it needs to be very, very inclusive for all R16s and all R18s. And as was pointed out, this can be regulated by a percentage of the total lot. So whatever that max percentage is, and 40% or 50% if it's attached, you can regulate it that way. One thing that I do want to point out that was in the staff report is that when the Planning Commission added the FAR, I'm not sure what the reasoning was specifically, and I think that it can be problematic because the city does not have FARs right now, and to implement FARs for this ordinance, for a very, very specific portion of this ordinance, is sort of unprecedented, and so I'm not sure where that would go. I think that it could be regulated with just percentage lot coverage. So I am very supportive of this in general, and I hope that that we can do what a lot of other cities have already been doing, and be flexible with this. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Josh? Josh Bruce? Okay. Rob Meyer? Mayor. Sorry.
That's all right. Rob Mayer, architect, sat on the Planning Commission and Architectural Review for 4 years. I think there's a problem.
Congratulations.
Yeah. I'm feeling at home now.
Did we?
At what time? 10:45 at night. The thing I wanted to bring up, and I think it's a big misunderstanding by this city, the state law says that they want to give a sort of a bucket or a framework to say that ministerial approval is up to 1,200 square feet. They're not mandating that you have to build 1,200 square foot units or allow for it. I scoured a lot of ordinances that have been updated recently. Santa Cruz, which is a pretty darn progressive place, they allow 1,200 square feet on a 12,000 square foot lot. Okay. Now let's put this in context. We're going to reduce the lot size from 7,000 to 6 and almost double the size of the guest house. I've designed 9 guest houses since, let's see, 2006. Okay, one of them's mine. Okay, and I ask anybody that a 7,000 square foot lot, hey, or ask them what size the lot is, and then because I encourage the guest houses, and everybody's been pretty happy. But the ones that are resistant is the rear setback. That's the one that I don't want to lose 10 more feet, and so I would encourage you to do less is more. And I know in that last thing about affordable housing, you want a little bit more. This one, I think 640 is a good sized guest house. I have very happy clients and residents. Now, is it affordable? A lot of my clients are getting $2,200 to $2,800 for a well-designed guest house.